Ladies and gentlemen, today's podcast, musician, songwriter, producer, rock star, podcaster, James Michael.
This is Bertcast.
It's not that bad, you know, but I'm from the school of podcasting where it's like podcasts should be like Leanne tries to keep hers here, move that to wherever you need it. Leanne tries to keep hers to an hour. A lot of guys try to keep theirs to an hour. My buddy Steve Byrne has a podcast called The Gentleman's Dojo, a really great podcast, keeps it to an hour. Sam Tripoli's got the Tinfoil Hat podcast, keeps it to an hour. I think they do that. I like it to go as long as it needs to go.
Yeah.
But you know, I did a 5-hour podcast with Rogan one time, which I could have done a 10-hour one with them that day. It was just, we were just in a great place. And so tomorrow we're doing 3. One's with Steve Byrne, obviously, oddly enough. He did directed a movie about the guy named Amazing Jonathan. Do you ever know who that is?
No.
Really interesting guy. And then anyway, 2 other ones, Dan St. Germain and Kurt Metzger and Annie Letterman.
So you kind of pace yourself, don't you? Like
a little bit. Mine's different than yours. I'm doing one. Halston and I are doing one, an add-on where it's me talking, just me,
right,
and Halston in the room. I'll be talking to Halston, but I'm kind of talking in thin air.
Right.
I listened to the first one you did, which was fantastic.
Oh, thank you.
And you were talking about doing this because your therapist. I'm in therapy too, by the way, and I am blown away when people are afraid to talk about being in therapy. Like,
yeah, I am too, and I think that what I'm finding is that really the only people that are afraid of talking about therapy is people in our business. You know, people that are in the entertainment business that have already created this persona about themselves. What I'm finding is like my fans are coming out of the woodwork saying, thank you for talking about this. My daughter, my granddaughter, my son, my husband is dealing with issues. I suffer from pretty severe bipolar disorder. Yeah. So I've been talking about that a lot. And it's amazing to me how common it is. And that's what I've been finding is that people are really craving people like us being honest about those type of things. And I mean, you know, that's something that I've been loving about your podcast is you don't have any filters about your life in general. That's something that you've actually inspired me to be more open about shit like that.
It's a double-edged sword. I overshare. I think it probably compensates for a lack of creativity, but but I overshare. But I've done something that you were talking about being interviewed and being the artist versus the real person.
Yeah.
And that crossover. See, I've erased any separation between church and state.
Yes.
So it's one entity, which can be tricky. So like the Bert that I am on this podcast is also the Bert I'm in the house with my family.
Right.
Is the Bert that drops my kids off. Is the Bert that interacts with children that I don't know, and is the Bert on stage. It's the same person.
Well, let me tell you, I mean, to me, that is what inspires me because I have spent the last 20 years in a business where pretty much every move that I make is designed and it's finessed, and you don't release anything. You don't release songs until they're exactly how you want them, and you don't release photos of yourself until it's exactly how you want it, and you don't say anything in the press unless it's completely on message. And after 20 years, and I've been very successful. I've been very, very lucky, but after 20 years of that, I just kind of got to the point where I'm so envious of people like you that, like you said, separation of church and state. You've just gotten rid of all of that, so you don't have this burden to carry around every day. After a while, it's a real burden to carry that type of stuff around.
Yeah, you were talking a little bit about something. Have you ever read the book? Have you ever read this book, The War of Art?
No.
Okay, this is maybe one of the greatest books I've ever read in my life.
Let me see that.
And there's a section in there that spoke to me. I read it probably. I've read this book a number of times, or different sections of the book at different times.
Wow.
But there's a section in there called The Definition of a Hack, and you said something in your podcast, which I went, oh, I bet he hasn't read this. I need to get him to get this book.
I need to check that out.
It really is. It'll really blow your mind. It's so, but there was a period where I was like, I would watch comics do what Dane was doing. This is probably 14 years ago.
Right.
They would go up and do what Dane Cook was doing. They would embody what Dane did. They would they would be high energy. They would move their hands around a lot. They would repeat their sentences over and over, or the word, the punchline over and over again. I walk down the street, I'm walking.
Yeah.
You know,
the same rhythm, the same
rhythm.
Right.
And there's a definition of a hack, and it says it's a person who's trying to predict what the marketplace will buy, as opposed to doing what you did. And when I heard you said something in there, and you're like, it can be. You can get super lost in the business because you're trying to make a product that you think people will like, as opposed to when you're younger, you're just doing what you do.
Well, yeah, it's not even a choice anymore. I mean, that is what the record companies are seeking. You know, as soon as you have one artist come along, let's just say, for instance, Nirvana, they come along and they change everything. They are completely out of the box. They don't care about any of the rules, and they just create a whole new sound. And then what happens is that the record companies go and try to find the next 50 of those, and that's the only type of artist that they sign. Imagine if that was in your business, if the only comedians that were able to succeed are ones that, like you just explained, had the same tempo, the same pattern, the same vibe. That's what's happened to the music industry over the last 25 years. Really, I mean, since I've been in it, we have been in a chase to, you know, you have a very, very small group of artists that are trying to create something new. And then the masses, most of the artists and most of the record companies and most of the managers are looking to play off of a success that's already happened. So they're looking for people that have that same tempo, that have that same sound.
Yeah.
And that's frustrating. That's frustrating as an artist creator because, you know, and I'm guilty of that as well. It happens in your songwriting. You're constantly having to, you know, to look at what's on the charts and figure out what's working about that. And then you try to create art that in some way hints at that, you know, maybe put your own original twist on it, but you just find yourself chasing that all the time. And I think that I reached a point in my career, I'm 50 now, and I've had a really, really lucky, very, very successful career, but I reached a point where I just can't do that chase anymore because you feel like a fraud. You know, you see that. I see that at the store. I see people doing what they see is working. Right.
It's almost like a shortcut sometimes. It's like people going, no, yeah, I could do something similar to what that guy's doing. Like Bill Burr's are kind of. I would say Bill Burr. Are you familiar with Bill Burr?
I love Bill Burr.
He's probably the guy doing it the most original. He's just being himself. And I think that is what inspires me when you watch him or Chappelle, or Rogan, or there are a lot of guys. Joey Diaz does it very much by his own standard, and so I think that inspires me. So I started going, I just wanted, like, I got famous for one story about getting involved with the Russian mafia, and that was my calling card. But I'm not going to sit there and try to rewrite other outrageous Did you go through a phase right after that broke that you kind of thought maybe I should, or did you ever consider coming up with a few more machine type of stories? I had one which I had told on Rogan's podcast around the same time I told the Machine about being at a live sex show in Amsterdam called Flying Dildos, and so I told that story, and I definitely, with a brand, I was like, yeah, I got a couple of those, but then it's like you write what you know. Like the only thing I know really is like what's going on in my life right now. Right. And so like, I just end up writing. I'm not a great comedian in the sense that like, I can't sit like Anthony Jeselnik and see a topic and then go, oh, here's the joke for that. Like I don't think like that. Like Craig Mack died today and I just got sad. Yeah. I was like, that sucks, man. Yeah. And then someone's got Craig Mack jokes. And I'm like, I was like, I didn't see it that way. Like, I just was like, oh fuck, he's 46, man. I'm 45. How did he die? Dude, like
that shit freaks me out all the time now. You know, I mean, we're both pretty young looking for our age. I think pretty
we're both young by the way.
We are young. You're right. But dude, it's happening so often now. Where like I literally, you know, you'll hear of who just died recently. Some like 40-year-old female movie star or something. It freaks me out now. Do you do this where you're like every little ache in your body now means something and you're Googling that shit all the time?
Oh yeah.
Dude.
Oh yeah. I'm certain I have blood clots. My dad the other day was like, I got blood clots. I know I got blood clots. And I was like, wait, that means I have blood clots.
Right.
And he was like, oh, we all got blood clots. That's what they get you on. Oh, what's his name had an aneurysm? And I was like, what? And he's like, oh, I didn't tell you about that.
I'm pretty sure I'm going to go buy an aneurysm. I'm pretty sure that's what's going to take me out.
So wait, so where did you grow up?
I grew up in a little town called Holland, Michigan.
Oh, I knew that.
So yeah, I was from the Midwest, but as a kid, my dad was an artist. He was an art professor, but he was also a visual artist, great painter, and actually pretty successful at it. He would teach over in Europe for a year and then back in the States for a year. So as a kid, I spent a lot of time over in England living over there. So it was a pretty cool way to grow up.
Really?
But yeah, my family was very artistic. My mom was an author, and my dad was a painter, and that's the kind of
holy crap.
Yeah, it was cool. I was wondering.
Only child?
No, I have an older brother.
Yeah, how old?
He's 3 years older than me. He's a pilot. He flies for NetJets.
Oh, I know NetJets.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Did he introduce you to music?
He did actually. He was into music. He always wanted to be a guitar player, and I remember the day he brought home the first Meat Loaf album, Bat Out of Hell. And I was just it was, Meat Loaf. And,
yeah, of course.
And he brought home the picture disc, the vinyl disc with the actual picture on it. And that was really cool. That was my first introduction to music. And ironically, I ended up writing and producing for Meat Loaf down the road. I have a great story about meeting him, actually. I had done a show here in Los Angeles. I was pretty young, and Meat Loaf came to the show. And I had heard that he was in the audience, and I thought, wow, that's cool. That was kind of my biggest celebrity moment so far. I was just trying to break into the business. And the next day, I get a phone call, and it says, hey, James, this is Meat Loaf. And I was like, well, yeah, hi. And he's like, I was at your show last night, and I made some notes. Do you mind?
Shit.
Do you mind if I give you some notes? And I'm like, you got to be kidding me! But yeah. So we spent an hour on the phone, and he was giving me all this advice on things that were right about my performance, things that weren't right about my performance. Long story short, we kind of became friends, and he became a real champion of mine. And so he had called me up. We'd gotten to know each other maybe 6 months into this friendship, and he said, hey, I'm getting ready to make another record. I'm not working with Jim Steinman anymore, which was the guy that wrote all of his big hit songs. He says, I really like your songwriting. Would you want to come out to the house and talk to me about writing some of my new record? And of course, so I say yes, and I planned to go out there, and the weekend, it was the weekend that I went out there. I'm driving up into Bel Air, and I'm just a poor kid. I literally have
what
nothing
year is this?
Oh God, this has got to be 98, something like that.
What year did you come out to LA?
I think I came out here in like 87.
Holy shit.
Dude, I've been out here a long time. I've been
87.
I've been out in California longer than I've was ever in Michigan. Yeah, I've been here a long time. I mean, this is home. This feels like home to me.
Yeah.
So I get out to his, my imagination's going wild because I'm thinking Bat Out of Hell. I'm thinking I'm going to show up and it's going to be this gothic castle
with
and
candelabras.
Yeah,
and
I'm going to ring the doorbell. It's going to be a gong, and then there's going to be like a 3-headed dog that answers the door.
He'll be coming down a spiral staircase
in
with
a cape,
scarf,
right? In a cape.
Yeah.
So I get there, and it's a very conventional kind of colonial style house, and so and first off, I got to preface this by saying I love the guy. He's been awesome to me. He's an awesome guy, but my dreams were kind of shattered when I first got there because it was a white picket fence and just nothing rock and roll about it. Nothing. I ring the doorbell and it's just like this ding dong, the most wimpy feminine.
Not the dong.
No, nothing like that. No gongs, nothing. And then a couple of yippy dogs answer the door, and then he shows up in his pajamas, and I'm thinking, this is just not at all what I was expecting.
Fuck, Meat Loaf. Don't you know the branding?
Exactly. Come on. So anyway, we had a lovely time, and one of the coolest things was at some point he walked me down this hallway in his house, and at the end of this long hallway was the original artwork to Bat Out of Hell. And I just kind of stood there in front of him. And I just thought, man, if my brother could be here right now, because he was the one that had brought home that picture disc. But it turned into a great friendship, a great working relationship. I wrote several songs for him over the years, and he's been a champion of mine to this day.
It's one of the things about the music business. I think everyone. I know for a fact that like when I went to my 20th reunion, maybe people were like, "So, do you support yourself from stand-up?" And I was like, "Yeah, I've been supporting myself from stand-up for like 15, 20 years, or from at the time, probably 15 years." And they're like, "Really?" And you're like, "Yeah, like all my friends, we all make a living, but we're not like millionaires." And then even when you are a millionaire, people still don't know you're a millionaire. Right. And then like they only know the people that are making $16 million a year. Right, yeah. And then they assume. And it was one of the things that about the music industry is like we have our friends. One of our friends wrote. I wish I knew the exact song he wrote. It was a Chaka Khan song. Oh yeah. He wrote for Chaka Khan, and he wrote for the Pointer Sisters in the '80s, and he made a bunch of money off that. Right. And then he still writes. He tours with who's Hugh Laurie has a band. He tours with Hugh Laurie. Around the world, and it's a really neat living. It's a great life. 2 kids. Also teaches guitar lessons because he loves guitar. Right. But it's like I remember hearing that, and they were like, and like they have like an Escalade. They have like nice cars, and they have a beautiful house. They're redoing their house. I'm like, so when you see someone redoing your house, you're like, oh, you must have money. Right. Like you're redoing your house, and they're like, oh yeah, he makes a great living. But it's one of the things about about the music business that I think always fascinated me is how many people there are that can make money and really be behind the scenes. Oh yeah, absolutely. In fact, the behind the scenes people make way more typically than the people in front of the scenes. I mean, as an example, I started a band late in my career called 6 a.m. and we actually got very successful over the last decade. But the money that I made doing that, which was fantastic, I can't complain, was nothing compared to the money that I made as a songwriter writing for artists like Kelly Clarkson Kelly Clarkson is that like secret time performer of mine that I fucking love. Dude, she's insane. She's a lovely woman. She's so awesome. She represents so many things that I love about the music, about the good side of the music business. She's a real person. She is unfiltered, just good, and one of the most amazing singers out there. She's legit is. I was in my car one time, and Since You've Been Gone came on. Yeah. That song fucking rocked. Dude. Like I hear that and I just get, I can't live, breathe for the first time. Me and all of my professional songwriting partners have tried to rewrite that song a million times. Back to the conversation about trying to chase what's already been successful. We've all tried to write that song a million times, and that's just a brilliant song. There are some artists. We're looking at. We're looking for intro music for my special. And I was talking to my buddy who's a movie producer, and I was like, I think I kind of want, like, Rage Against the Machine's got a really good song that would be good, like an older, it's from the first album. Yeah. So, because I'm thinking Penny, what is it, Penny Foolish, whatever, like I'm trying to save money. So I'm like, sure. First album, the first album will be the cheaper album. Right. He's like, yeah, it'll be like probably $200,000. And I was like, what? He was like, well, you got the publishing rights and then the performance rights. Yeah. And I was like, huh? Well, what people do then is they just hire a songwriter to come up with a sound alike. Yup. Pretty gross part of the business, but it's a real part of the business, and a lot of money's made there doing that. Shout out to Dan Adler. I know that you're doing that on Man vs. Food. Yeah. I know that you're doing that because every time you go to your music, Dan Adler is one of my buddies. He's got he created a couple of my shows, but he created Man vs. Food. Right. And sometimes I hear the music and I go, oh, I know this song, and then it changes melody, and I went, oh, you motherfucker. Yeah. It's because all the rest of America doesn't know that's not the song they think it is. Right. They go, oh, that's going to be the song, and your emotions connect to it. Oh yeah, absolutely. And then it's just like, oh, that's right. And it happens time and time again. I had a TV show, I can't remember what network it was, but they approached me and asked me to write a theme song for their series that they had. It was like the second season of this series. So I wrote this great theme song, performed it,
They loved it. It got cut into the first episode, and it was kind of on the fast track. So they had actually cut it into the show before we had done the negotiations and figured out the business side of it.
Yeah.
Well, then they figured now that it's in the show, we'll just strong arm them, and they tried to get it for just pennies. I mean, like just really low ball. And I just said, I can't do that, man. I got a business I'm running here. I can't do it. So what did they do? They went to another sound-alike. They went to a writer to do a sound-alike of mine, and so the first 2 episodes of of the show have my actual song on it, and then the next one is just like the whole rest of the season has this sound-alike song, which is so obviously. I went to a what they call him, a musicologist, because I was going to sue them for copyright infringement.
Yeah.
Turns out it just wouldn't have been worth the money to sue them, but it was clearly a copyright infringement. That happens all the time.
It's so interesting that it's an acceptable part of the business, whereas if you did that in stand-up or they do it in television, something pops and they're like, oh, we need something just like that. Like like there's so many spin-offs of one of my favorite shows is I don't even know what the name of it now is, but it's like living off the grid, above the 100 degrees, just under the North Pole, Northern Alaska. Like there's like 9 shows like it. Right. I can watch them interchangeably. I don't even know the difference. Yeah. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's fine.
I think people are starting to push back on that. I think, and that actually brings up a question I wanted to ask you. In a podcast you did just recently, you were talking about, theft of jokes. Yeah. And you mentioned that there's a couple of times where you've had that happen, and you chose not to confront the person about it. And I thought to myself, that's like the first out of character thing I've heard. I don't know you, but I've binge watched all of your podcasts, by the way, so I feel like I know a lot about you. But why would you not choose to confront that person when you have no filter about anything else? What was it that made you just think, is this a dangerous move?
There's no benefit.
Yeah, I guess you're not going to get that joke back.
You're not, and it's and then what happens is, so I did it one time.
You confronted a person.
I confronted him privately. Went to his house and I confronted him privately. Right. And it just dissolved. It was like almost like it was like a sleight of hand. Like, no, it's gonna be free. I don't know what you're talking about. It's fine. Everything's fine. Everything's fine. Don't worry about it. Right. And I was like, yeah, but it kind of fucked me up a little bit. And I don't think. Maybe I wasn't clear enough. Maybe that person didn't hear me clear enough. Maybe I thought I was pretty vocal. Maybe I wasn't. I don't know. And then I went on my buddy Joe's podcast and I talked about it there. Right. And then that was pretty clear. I think everyone, it was like, okay, this is really clear. Yeah. And number one, I think there's a lot of responsibility that comes along with that. I mean, I can't correlate this to rape because I think that's too petty for me to say. It's like, but I will say that I do understand women when they said women have nothing to gain by coming out and saying they've been sexually assaulted. I do understand that. I go. Yeah. If I was sexually assaulted, I probably wouldn't tell a fucking soul. I was like, I don't want to deal with the fucking hassle. I don't want to go to the cop station. I don't want to have to have a rape kit done to me. Right. I don't want to have to point out my accuser. I don't want to have people call me a liar. I don't want to have people.
You don't have to relive that.
I don't want to have to relive it over and over and over again. Right. And so for me, the second time I got stolen from, it was arguably even a bigger person, and it could have gotten really nasty. And I talked to Ari and I talked to Tom. And by the way, the first time I got stolen from, I talked to my manager. My manager said, "Do not do anything about it. Don't even bring it up. Don't mention it. Shut your mouth and just keep working." And I went, "Oh, you're out of your mind. I'm gonna talk to It was the second time. Both Tom and Ari was like, "I wouldn't say a fucking word." I was like, really? And they're like, do not say a word because it just makes you look like you don't like the way the game's played, or you got sour grapes, or you're not happy that you're not that successful.
I can see that. It's very different in my business because there have been many copyright lawsuits that have been won successfully, even though copyright infringement is a very difficult thing to prove. But there's also potential financial benefit to that. If somebody has stolen your song and it's become a big hit.
Oh, there's no benefit for us.
See, that's the thing.
There's no financial benefit.
There's never been a lawsuit probably in the comedy world.
No, there couldn't be. I don't know if anyone. Then it turns into he said she said, or
Right.
he said or he said she said, but.
Although now, chances are there is documentation of it on YouTube or wherever.
Oh,
it might be.
I went and screen grabbed everything.
Sure.
I went and pulled everything, and just in case, because I actually told one person about it who didn't believe me and said it called me a liar.
Right.
And we were in a hotel room and we were drunk,
Right.
and I brought it up, and they said that's impossible, and I said no, it's really totally possible. I said it's right on my phone. Here's and I showed them the proof I had, and they still didn't believe me.
Jeez.
And I was like, no, that's that person actually admitting they did it. Wow. And they still didn't believe me.
Wow.
It was crazy. It's really hard. I got to a place with comedy where I just said, I want to write jokes no one else can write. Meaning I want to write longer form stories. I want to write I want to write jokes where the joke is so authentically me,
right?
That if someone else was doing it, everyone would see it.
Yeah.
So and I have a joke on my new special about Alexa. Well, that joke, if it gets stolen, that's my fault because it's not that. I mean, it's an original joke. I wrote it, but look, Mark.
I'm not sure.
Shut the fuck up, Alexa.
Dude, I have. Let me get my phone. Yesterday, I'm watching your podcast, the one with Zane.
Yeah, Zane Lamprey.
Which I think you just did recently, right?
Yeah.
And I had gotten up to take a piss, and I had
Alexa, stop.
and I had gotten up to take a piss, and it was right at this time when you were talking about altitude, from sea level altitude. So I come back from the bathroom, and my phone's lit up. I'm like, what's going on? I'm here by myself, and I screen grabbed this because I wanted to show you this. This is what my screen said. My phone said.
Oh my God.
And so I'm like, what the fuck is this? So I like rewind, and then you guys were talking about altitude, and at some point you had asked, you said, hey Siri, what is the altitude in Phoenix? And so my phone thinks I asked it what the altitude of my penis is, which was 669 feet. And I thought to myself, I ask Siri shit all the time. Yeah, there she goes. It's now my penis is at 630 feet. But I ask Siri shit all the time, and she's like, "I'm sorry, I don't know the answer." But she had no problem figuring out what the altitude of my penis was.
Dude, I got into a fight with that cylinder bitch right there and the bitch on my phone. Right, I'm not gonna say their names, then they'll light up.
Exactly.
And
I like that one, by the way.
The cylinder bitch.
Yeah, I like the cylinder bitch.
She's invaluable. And so I got into a fight with them. And I didn't. It starts because I'm drunk, and I talk about this in my special, but I'm calling the cylinder bitch by the phone bitch's name. So I'm saying, hey S word,
right?
Hey S word, and the cylinder's not answering, but my phone answers, and then I realize my mistake, and I say the cylinder bitch's name, and the S phone bitch comes in and goes, "You're calling me by the wrong name, buttface."
No
and I go,
shit.
and I say that on stage. and I go, I swear to God, if you call her by the wrong name, she calls you buttface. And this woman comes up to me. She goes, no, she doesn't. She goes, just so you know, your kids went in your phone and changed your name to buttface for her to call you buttface. And I was like, you sons of bitches.
That's awesome.
So here I am I'm like, swear to God, if you call her by the wrong name, she calls you buttface. And they're like, no, your kids are assholes.
This technology is a little bit scary. I'm very protective. You're probably very open about this shit. I'm very protective about my phone and shit that's on there, and I don't want any. I always put it face down. But with this new technology, people can get into your shit. Like I could just say, hey Siri, what's on my schedule for tomorrow? And your phone is going to tell me what's on your schedule tomorrow, just like mine is, without having to have any thumb or face
Dude,
ID.
There was a girl that worked for me for one episode. I'm not saying that I got rid of her because of this, but I definitely will say that this scared the living shit out of me, and then we didn't work again together for whatever reason. Right. We were all sitting at lunch, and I said, are you in a relationship? She goes, I just got out of a relationship. I said, really? She goes, yeah, my boyfriend was cheating. And we're like, whoa. And we're like, did you catch him? And she was like, oh yeah, I caught him. And we're like, really? She's like, yeah, one night he fell asleep and I grabbed his phone and I put his thumb on his phone so it unlocked it, and I went through his messages.
Holy
and caught him cheating, and I pulled it up and I went, that's some spy shit right there.
Out of here.
I was like, oh my God, that I respect that brain.
Yeah, pretty awesome.
But not working with me.
No.
that's someone who definitely records you losing your shit in the van about whatever skydive you have to do. And she's like, see, he said bitch. He's a misogynist. And I was like, but yeah, that one, that's how much has the music industry changed from when, like, I read Guns N' Roses' book about them being street kids,
right.
and they'd say, I think they were the ones that were like, yeah, we'll sign with Sony if he runs down Sunset naked,
right?
And they were like, great. And then some exec runs down naked, and they're like, we signed with Sony. Now you could not do that,
no,
in a million fucking years.
No,
did you see the change coming?
Oh yeah, I moved out here in the late '80s, so So
what were the big bands in the scene in the late '80s?
Warrant.
Oh,
I was at their signing party.
For real?
Yeah, it's like it was those type of bands where it was kind of the last few years of the hair metal before Nirvana came along and squashed everything. But man, it was such a healthy time in the music business. It was literally everything that you see in the movies. Sunset Strip was just jam packed with all these long haired dudes handing out flyers every night, and it was just alive, man. Every club was just banging all the time, and it was a very, very different time. The music industry has changed so much since then.
I think if I could go in a time machine to any time in music, it would be that era. Just that. I mean, there's I think, obviously that Laurel Canyon in the 60s would be beautiful. I mean, okay, let's go through 5. You got 5 time machine trips you get to take.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And you're just going to see not just a concert, but you're going to that era of, like, I want to be in Seattle in 1991. That's one of the places.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to be on the Sunset Strip in, what was it? I guess 85,
right.
87.
Right.
I would definitely love to be in Germany in, like, the 1300s or whenever Amadeus was.
Oh geez, yeah.
Like, that would
think of that. Yeah,
just badass.
I think I'd want to do Frank Sinatra and Sammy Davis. I mean,
fuck yeah.
I just want to be a drinking buddy of that whole gang.
How great would that? Just one of those shows in the 60s in Vegas where you dress up nice, you don't know smoking causes cancer,
right?
You can drink and drive. No one's gonna talk down to you. Like, you put your chick on your arm and you go, oh honey, this is nice.
I don't think that we're ever gonna have any era like that again.
No.
It's just, we're all just so fragmented now. Doesn't it feel like that? I mean, back then it just, of course, social media changed everything, but yeah, those were the days. That just seems like when men were men, and it just was. It was.
That'll never be the way. That'll never. I would like to see. I'm on the fence if I would like to be around for, like, the 30s of country music or the 50s.
Yeah.
It would be cool.
I think the 50s would have been cool across the board.
50s would have been cool across
roll.
the board. Yeah. You know what though? I remember hearing about Glenn Miller. And they were like, Glenn Miller was I don't know if I was drunk and I heard this somewhere, or I don't know if I just thought of it, but Glenn Miller was like Eminem in the 30s, I guess.
Yeah.
And he went to World War II and was like, guys, I'm fighting for our troops. And I just remember hearing that going, oh, that will never happen again. You'll never get, Eminem would never join the military.
Right.
And then go, yeah, I'm going to go fight. And at night I'll put on shows.
Right.
And that's what I'll do. And by the way, I don't need the millions. I'm doing this because this is my country, my duty.
Well,
and then
sadly, we would forget about him. He just off the charts for a couple of years.
He's not on Instagram? I don't even know what the fuck he's doing. Yeah.
Right.
That's so. And then Glenn Miller died over not the Bering Straits, but the English Channel.
Right.
His plane went down. That, Halston, what's the Glenn Miller song? What's the Glenn Miller song? It's in the thick of the night?
In the mood.
In the mood.
In the mood, yeah.
That song, I was high as shit one day. I shouldn't have been driving, but I was. And I'm driving through Larchmont, and this is around that time, and I put on Into the Mood, and then and it just, I got so into that fucking song.
I have a fantasy that when I finally do retire from music, I'm probably only going to listen to stuff from that era and back. Because that music can still shape your day. It can shape everything about your world. And nowadays, it's just everything's so disposable. It's hard to find.
It really is. I mean, and everything's so disposable and so, like you say, like everyone gloms onto. Like I'm into hip hop, and right now there's this whole genre of the Lils, like the Lil Pump, Lil Dump, Lil 6ix9ine, Lil something. Lil Xan,
right.
Lil Yachty, and Lil Wayne's, but their big thing is, I guess Lil Xan shit on Tupac. Now they're all shitting on Tupac because he did it. It got him press,
right.
And his fans don't give a shit about Tupac,
right?
And so now everyone's doing it, and you're just like, there's no originality. There's no.
Yeah, you have to really buy into that stuff. I mean, if you're on the periphery of that, you just gloss over it. And I think that's really the case no matter what genre of music you're talking about now. You kind of have to invest yourself into it and buy into those stories. Otherwise, it's just all noise.
So how did you come out from Michigan on the Sunset Strip, seeing great shows, to then, now I'm in the industry?
It was a long fucking journey. I mean, to be honest with you, I had visions as I was driving across the country to move out here that, I'll give it a few years and then I'll, become a rock star. That's what I thought was going to happen. Honestly, I didn't have my first hit as a artist until I was 40 years old. That's a long fucking time to be out here slugging it out in Los Angeles. Now, I had built some successful things in my career. I became a pretty successful songwriter in my 30s. But that was the journey for me. I came out here, I joined a bunch of shitty bands and kind of struggled in the club scene for a while, trying to get something happening.
And so wait, show me how that, like, tell me how that, like, how does that even work? Like you're going, like, are you meeting people at work? Do you have a day job?
I worked at Red Lobster out here in Tarzana, and everyone there was either a waiter. I mean, was either a actor, musician, dancer, whatever it may be. So it was fun and it was exciting, and it was kind of like an episode of Friends. Everyone had their shit going on, but we were all trying to figure out what life was, and joining different bands. And I gave up several times. In fact, I gave up music. Got married, moved up to San Francisco, and I was painting buildings for a living. And it was actually my now ex-wife who convinced me to maybe start playing the piano again. And I went around to some wine bars in San Francisco. I got a gig and slowly kind of started getting that bug again. And at some point I started writing songs again. And a buddy, I'd played a song that I'd written for a buddy of mine, and he said, you should join this Northern California Songwriters Association, play this song for some people and see if you can get some interest. And long story short, I went to this thing, I played a song, it got selected, I signed a publishing deal, and then I kind of got into the system. I wasn't successful, but I was in the system. Now I was dealing with that next level up of managers, publishers. I actually had an into some record companies, and it was just a slow build, man. I don't know if I could. It's probably very much like what your rise was. You're slogging it out. You're working the door, and I think that I worked the door in my business for many, many years until I just had one lucky break after another, and one of those actually was pivotal, and it was a song that I wrote for a band called Saliva.
I remember Saliva.
It became I wrote this song called Rest in Pieces, and it became a big hit. And I went from being broke ass to having a shit ton of money like that, and everything changed. And so before in bands. And then you're like, and then you get married and you're like, let's fucking chill out. Yeah, let's do the responsible thing.
Let's do the responsible thing. Now, did anyone in the bands that you were ever in, did any of them blow up? Did you ever have a guy that you played with that you're like, oh wow, he's
Not really, but I did have a lot of bands that I played, that I did shows with blow up. When I was up in San Francisco, I had a rock band called The Last Americans that got absolutely nothing happening for them. We were booking our own gigs and stuff, but we would do shows with bands like Third Eye Blind and Train and, a few other bands that just exploded, which even makes it worse, because you're just like, what am I doing wrong here? Why are these guys just exploding? It almost seemed like if you want to have a successful career, come play with my band and off you go, and I'll just kind of stay stagnant. It was like that for a long time. So I watched a lot of bands blow up.
And so then you write the one song, the publishing, you join that thing, publishing, it gets sold, someone buys it, you have some money, and then you're like, oh, I can write songs.
Well, it was such a long journey getting to that once that happened, I told this story on my podcast a couple of weeks ago, but like I said, I was so fucking broke. I had no money, and I was divorced or going through a divorce, and I was just down and
But thank God going through the divorce broke, as opposed to getting the money and then going through the divorce.
Oh, I know. Trust me, I thought a lot about that. That was somebody looking out for me. So I got my first enormous check in the mail. And I don't know if you've ever been that broke.
But wait. Get me to the enormous check.
Okay.
So you write a few songs.
Yeah.
And then they get picked up, and you're like, okay, this is picking up steam.
Yeah.
Then you write the song for Saliva.
Yeah.
And now, do you have any idea what the money coming in's gonna be, or do you like?
I don't. But I hoped that it would be good, but it was way better. This was back in the time in the music business when we were all overpaid for what we did. I mean, there's just no question. You know, I have made $1 million off of a song that took me 2 hours to write. That doesn't happen that much anymore. I mean, it still happens in the pop world quite a bit, but yeah, I mean, I was down and out. I was, I'd had enough little things happen that made me think, if I stick with this, if I believe in this and I keep on plugging away, one of these could break, but you don't know when it's going to be. But yeah, as soon as that song, Rest in Pieces, broke the top 10, that's when I started shopping for a publishing deal. That's when I thought, okay, now I've got something to go back to these guys with and say, let's talk real business here.
So what's a publishing deal?
A publishing deal, every time your song is played, if you write a song, let's just say, for instance, you write a song for Kelly Clarkson. Every time that song is played on the radio, it generates money.
From advertisers, from people advertise on the radio station pays for it.
Well, obviously through ad sales, that's how radio stations make their money.
Yeah.
But they have to. What brings people to a radio station is the music.
Yeah.
What the radio station cares about is the ad sales. So they've got to pay then to use that music. The music is really a lost leader to get people to listen to advertisements. So when your song is played on the radio, every time it's played, the radio station has to log it, and then it goes to the performance like BMI or ASCAP.
I remember. I knew a girl, Patty, who worked for ASCAP.
Yeah. So every year, radio stations pay a lot of money to ASCAP and BMI and a couple of other organizations. That money is then distributed to the writers of that song. One thing that a lot of people don't understand is that if Kelly Clarkson cuts a song of mine and it gets played on the radio, she's not making any money off of that song being played on the radio. I'm the one making the money off of that song being played on the radio. She's making money off of record sales. Once radio play translates to record sales, she will make plenty of money off of record sales.
Do you make money on record sales too?
Yes.
So you make money on record sales and when it's played on the radio?
There are two different types of publishing. There's mechanical royalties, which is record sales. So every time a record sells, I don't know the exact numbers right now, but it's something like 9 cents per song.
Yeah.
So if you sell 1 million records and you have 10 songs on the record, do the math. It can be very lucrative.
Yeah.
And then also performance royalties.
Right now, there's 100 people going, do the math for me real quick.
Yeah, it would take me a half hour.
I literally would be here going, 9 million? 100,000?
I'm terrible at that.
Yeah.
So anyway, back to that song that I had done for Saliva. That was the first song that broke top 10, and I knew that it was going to generate a lot of money. So I went to the publishing company, and what publishing companies do is they are they will go around the world and collect the money that has been earned off of that song. Because as just a songwriter, you don't have the mechanism in place to go collect from all of these different countries.
Okay, so the song pops, and you know it's popping. You're like, I'm hearing this a lot.
Yeah.
And then you're like, someone's getting paid on this, but I'm not getting paid yet.
I knew that I was going to be getting paid on it, but I had to do a deal with a publishing company so that they could go out and gather that money for me. Otherwise, it's just sitting out there in all of these pots around the world.
Look, I apologize if I sound like an absolute moron. So you have a record label.
Yes.
You have a publishing company.
Yes.
What other, like, so I have a manager, I have an agent, I have a business manager, and I have a lawyer.
Right.
Technically, they all work together.
Yeah.
Like we have a team meeting here tomorrow. The whole team is coming. Everyone's coming.
Right.
My road manager, my tour manager does mostly my tour, but in my agent, I have all those different things. So when you're an artist, as a musician or a songwriter, do you have a publishing company?
Yeah. Well, it depends on like if you're an artist and you're just an artist, you're not really a songwriter, you're just an artist, then yeah, you would have a record label, obviously, because you need to release records. You would have an agent, a booking agent, whatever that may be, a manager, a lawyer, that type of stuff. But if you're a songwriter, you would then add to that, you would also add a publisher because you need somebody collecting your royalties, your mechanical royalties and your performance royalties. And
can you get better publishing deals the bigger you are?
Yeah, exactly. So there's a lot of publishing deals out there that would maybe, if you don't have hits already on the radio and you're just a good songwriter and you are lucky enough to get a publishing deal, it's probably going to be a small publishing deal. They may give you 15, 20 grand and say, everything that you write from here on out is ours. We own the copyright to it. And then, if you have some success, we'll renegotiate. When you have a lot of hit songs on the radio, it's a very different publishing deal. It could be $1 million. We'll give you $1 million. And
so for the most part, the publishing deal, the publishing company just cuts you a check and says, we'll collect all the money. Here's your money.
Yes.
And then if you have a few hits, do you ever get into a place where it's like you get back end points of what they collect, or is that the idea that?
Yes. I should actually clarify. A publishing deal would mean that you hand over the 100% of the copyright, 100% of that song to the publisher. They give you money up front, and then they just own that copyright. That's not that common. What's typically done is a co-publishing deal, which would mean I still retain ownership of half of the copyright. They own the other half. So when it boils down to it, as a co-publisher, I mean, it can get very confusing. Yeah. Let's put it this way. A song, the money earned off of a song gets broken down like this. Let's just say a song makes $1.
Okay.
100% of that is considered publishing, but half of that publishing is considered songwriter share, and the other half is considered publishing share. So for instance, 50 cents on the dollar would be publisher share, 50 cents on the dollar would be songwriter share. The songwriter share is a songwriter's birthright. It is yours no matter what. Yeah. Unless you're dumb enough to sign that away. Publishing share...
Like Vanilla Ice did to Suge Knight.
Yeah, it's that type of thing. It happens. Yeah. It's sad when it happens. The publisher share gets broken down into two halves. So now you've got your 50 cents over here, which is just yours as the songwriter.
Yeah.
The other 50 cents, if you've done a co-publishing deal, 25 cents of that goes to the publisher, and the other 25 cents comes to you. So if you sign a standard co-publishing deal, you're going to be making 75 cents on every dollar.
Wow, that's fucking phenomenal.
But then,
So then when you write the Saliva song, you go to a publishing company and you go, here's the deal. I wrote a legit song. I've got many more of these. I'm ready to get to work. Here's the deal I want. You don't have to give me your deal, but here's the deal I want. They're like, yeah, that sounds great. And then you just start writing songs. And then are you like writing songs and like going sending them to people?
Well, that's another job of the publisher. A publisher has a whole department which are called song pluggers. So what they're doing, their job, the song plugger's job, is to do exactly that. Is to take the songs that you write and find out in the business who's looking for songs, what artists are getting ready to make a record, what type of songs are they looking for, and then they'll plug those songs. And that still goes on quite a bit, and that's just a cutthroat business because now there's so many songwriters out there writing songs that, to get a song on a successful artist record is really hard these days, but that's what you rely on a publisher to set up those type of connections for you. What I've found is that in this business, it's really all about relationships. So you can rely on a publisher to do that, but your best bet is always to be out there making those relationships with the artist directly. Like
going to like album release parties and
anything, whatever it may be. In my case, I got very lucky because I also became the singer in a very successful band, and so I was in that world. So my buddies became rock stars. I was just always on tour with rock stars, and so I was always around them, and I developed.
So tell me how you got to that place. So you write a few successful songs, and this is, I'm guessing, 97.
I'm going to say, let's just say 99. I signed my first record deal.
Okay.
As an artist.
And that was always your goal.
I wanted to be a rock star.
Yeah.
But I had, and so that was around the time that things started feeling like I hadn't just wasted 10 years of my life. I started to see some payoff. People were paying attention to me. Like I said, the publishing deal. I signed a record deal, and and once you sign a record deal, you are now kind of brought into that family. So on the record label with me was bands like Motley Crue, Meat Loaf, Blondie, Sammy Hagar. Yeah. All of these artists I ended up working with because I was in that world. And I during that time, I made a solo record, my very first professional solo record, and it got released and just completely tanked.
Really?
But during that time, I was starting to write with all of these successful artists. I wrote with Sammy Hagar. I wrote a lot of songs for Motley Crue. I ended up writing a lot of songs for Meat Loaf, and other artists like that. And something very interesting happened. As my record just completely tanked, checks started coming in. Big checks started coming in because I had all of these songs on these successful artists' records. And that's when I started going, I can spend my time writing songs for other artists and just sit back and let the money roll in, or I can keep on trying to be an artist myself, which would have me focusing primarily just on writing songs for myself, and you can really only do one album a year, so that's only 12 songs. Get out there and run the risk of that album tanking like mine did. So I thought, well, this is obvious. I should just be a professional songwriter. So for several years, I was completely content with that, and I was building a really wonderful career.
It's got to be really nice. It's like none of the pressure, like and like I was saying to someone, there was a comic. I'm not gonna say his name, and just in case he's never said this, but there's a comic who was getting ready to tell a story, and on the storytelling show on Comedy Central, and I saw him the night, like a few weeks before he was going to do it, and I saw him tell the story, and I thought, I've been doing stand-up longer than he has. I said, oh, he's definitely getting in his way. Like, I can see where he's getting in his way.
Yeah.
Like, I would get rid of that line immediately. And so I was with his agent, and I pulled him aside, and I was like, hey, man, if you need help with that story, like, that's, it's kind of what I do. Like, I'm really good at stories, and I can definitely help you. And so he came over here, and we podcasted it. I won't ever release that. We just talked in the microphone so that I could give it to him later.
It was like a work session.
I said, tell me your story. Right. I said, I'm going to ask you, I'm going to stop you. I'm going to ask every detail of the story. I want to know everything about the story. We're going to tell your story.
We should have done that with me today, because I feel like I'm all over the place.
Oh, no, this is perfect. Okay. By the way, I'm fucking fascinated. Right. So he told me a story for 45 minutes. And then at the end, I said, here's how I tell your story. And I told him his story back to him. And I mean, when we were doing it, he was standing up and he was like jumping around going, this is awesome. Amazing. I go, dude, it's so much easier for me to hear your story and tell your story back to you than it is for me to work on my own story, because I get in my own way.
Right.
I wish that someone would do this with me. Like, I remember Segura had the greatest story, but the end sucked. But but he's attached to the end. He's attached to the end because it really happened to him.
Right.
I go, lose that, dude. This is your end.
Right.
And he was like, oh, that's fucking great. And I go, dude, it's just because I don't have any attachment to the truth, because it's not my story, that it's so much easier. I was going to do a podcast called Let Me Tell You Your Story, where people come in and tell me like a 45-minute story, or tell me a story and then I tell it back to them. I'm really good at that, of like the arc, finding the, you know, I can't do it perfectly, but like I can figure out someone's story pretty quickly.
To me, it's a lost art form. I have known probably 2 or 3 fantastic storytellers in my life. They all happen to be funny, but you know, storytelling isn't always about being funny. But since I've been watching your stuff and just kind of getting immersed in the world of comics again, which I find so fascinating, I'm realizing the importance of that, the importance of, what was it, the economy of words. And it's so funny to me, because I guess in my business, I do that, but in my business, I get the luxury of being able to work it and work it and work it in privacy, rework it until I've just got the perfect, until it's impeccable.
It in public, that's the worst part of it.
I don't understand how you do that. It fascinates me. It terrifies me.
I always tell this story. I don't always tell it, but I've told this before. I did not, like, when I did that album, Comfortably Dumb, I had probably 2 stories on there. I think it was what I was best at.
Right.
And I realized that young. I was like, we did a storytelling show, me and this guy DC Benny in New York, and I told in that show, I told 3 stories during that show, the storytelling thing that I only did probably like 5 weeks of.
Right.
I told 3 or 4 stories that ended up on albums somewhere, and I was like, and I remember doing them and going like, I think I found my niche. I think I found that I love telling a story, and I like a storytelling room. It's very different in a comedy club room. Telling a story in a comedy club room is a lot harder. So I tell the machine on Rogan, and Rogan's like, that's your story. You got to learn how to tell that on stage. And I go, oh, it's not a stage story. He's like, no, it is. And he's like, and he said on the podcast, if you guys see this man live, yell the machine until he tells that story.
Right.
And I was like, whoa. So I was in Columbus the next week. The whole crowd. Rogan has always been very big in Ohio, because his co-host Red Band's from Ohio, and Ohio is like Death Squad territory.
Right.
And so I'm at the Funny Bone. It's sold out, and they're yelling the machine, and it's at the end of my show. And I go, guys, I'm not going to tell it. And this kid in the front row, I wish I knew who the fuck he was. He goes, Bert, we understand it won't be good, but you have to tell this story so that it will get good. And he goes, don't worry, we'll laugh. And I was
he said that he's coaching you basically,
row. And he's like he's a comedy fan. He goes, we understand it won't be good, but you got to tell it in order to make it good.
Oh, that's amazing.
So I told that story for 4 years. For 1 year, it bombed.
Really?
For a year, I told it every show for a year, and it bombed.
Wow.
Dude, I think anyone that ever wants to get into comedy should hear what I'm saying.
Right.
I was an accomplished comedian.
Right.
I could do stand-up and kill for an hour.
Right.
And at the end of every hour, I told one story that bombed. And that's how I closed my shows.
Oh, my God.
Because I was like, I got to learn how to tell this story. I got to learn how to tell stories. So for 4 years, I invested in this story. And it got to the place where, like, year 3, it was good. Even at year 3, I didn't have a closer for it. Like, I didn't have I remember, by the way, oddly enough, it was in Columbus once again where I realized the closer. I remember what direction I was looking in when I realized the closer. And it's something that I, to this day, is like a foundation of the way I tell stories.
Right. And
I heard in myself when he spit vodka in the girl's face and shuts the door, he said to me, and I remember I got lost on some other detail. The fact that she was Puerto Rican, this teacher was Puerto Rican.
Right.
And I told a hacky joke there. But what he said to me was, fuck that bitch, this is Russia. And I thought, instantaneously, I was looking to the right of the room, and I thought, and they used to have trees on the stage at the Funny Bone, the old club. They'd have trees on each side of the stage. And I thought, I just planted a sapling. I bet I can let that sapling grow. And at the end of the story, in my head, I'm still telling the story.
Right, but you're thinking this.
I just found out how I'm going to close this story. And I'm so excited. And I get to the end of the story, and I say to the cop, he goes, so I understand you're in the machine. That's where I thought it ended. That's where I thought the story was over. But it always fell flat. And I thought, oh my God, I just figured out this story. And I said to him, I'm not in trouble. And the cop gets so close to me, I can smell his morning cigarette. And he says, no, fuck that bitch. This is Russia. And then the story's over. And I went, dude, if I hadn't told it for 4
years,
fucking years. I just told Rogan the other day, we're getting ready for my last special. And he goes, are you ready? And I said, I would like 4 years to work on it. Like, I wouldn't mind 4 more years. Like, but I think I'll always feel that way. And
well, that just fascinates me. Like, for me, it's just expected. If you have a hit song or you have a collection of hit songs, you got to sing that song every time you perform for the rest of your life.
But I believe there's something to that. Like, I know as a fan, there are comics that I want to see what Bill Burr's working on.
Right.
By the way, I actually don't need to see any bit he's done before.
Right.
Because I always like what he's working on.
Yeah.
Same with Tommy. But when it comes to, because they're not really storytellers, they are more comics. Dave Attell, I wouldn't mind hearing some of his older jokes because they have such a place in my heart.
Right.
But if he chooses, I want to hear what he's writing on. He's a great joke writer. When it comes to storytelling, Ron White tells the greatest story ever in stand-up comedy.
Huh.
Have you ever heard his tater salad story?
No.
I'm going to bastardize it for you. It's that good of a story. And by the way, I'm not going to say that. But anyway, he doesn't tell this anymore. He told it one time. I think it really changed his career. He told it on the Blue Collar Comedy Show. He was in a bar in New York, and he was wearing a hat, and he was drunk. I am shortening this story just to get to the best part.
Right.
So, and he gets kicked. They say, take your hat off, and he's not going to take his hat off. Right. And they kick him out of the bar. They beat him up, and the cops show up. And the cops start to arrest him. He goes, now I told you. And he goes, there's something you need to know about me. I grew up in a small town in Texas. He's like 1,000 people. It was small. Right. The guy next door to me was a police officer. I grew up with him. The guy next door to me was the town police officer. We grew up together. He knows me. One day I get a DUI and I get put in the tank. And this guy that I grew up with, that I knew my whole life, comes to the tank and says, what's your name? And he goes, are you fucking shitting me? I grew up next to you. What's your name? He goes, my name is Ron White. And he goes, any aliases? And he goes, yeah, they call me Tater Salad. Just fucking with this guy that he grew up with. And he goes, I told you that story only to tell you this story. I'm sitting handcuffed outside New York City, and they go, I'm sorry, are you Ron Tater Salad White? And it's just the best. It's such a great story. Now, listen, if you said to me, I could go see Ron White and see what he's working on, I definitely want to see what he's working on. He's a brilliant comic.
Right.
But if you told me he's gonna tell the tater salad story at the end, I'd be like, how much more for the ticket?
Yeah.
I'll pay another $30. I want to hear tater salad.
Well, how do you decide when it's time to hang a joke up?
I think for the most part, I have not decided wisely. Like you really underestimate how many people heard a joke. Like when I first released that story, and I would say that's my stairway to heaven.
Sure.
When I first told it on Rogan, I remember 1 million people saw it, and I was like, oh, that's everyone's heard it now.
Yeah.
And then it got released. I told it on a comedy festival, and it got 4 million people, and I was like, whoa. And then I told it for my special, and I was like, all right, I'm done with it. I'm retiring it. And then I posted the joke on Facebook, and it got like 30 million views. And that is the first time I realized, oh, no one's heard this joke.
Right.
No, actually, no one's ever heard this story.
Right.
I had thought everyone heard it.
Right.
I had thought I'm telling the same story over and over again, and everyone's heard it 1 million times. no one had heard it.
Yeah,
no one knew who I was.
You're in your bubble, and you think, well, of course, everyone in your bubble has heard it, but it's very deceiving. Same way with me in my business. It's very easy to think that you're super famous when with social media, and you have all of these fans every day checking in on what you're doing and reposting stuff and talking about you, and then you meet somebody super famous, and you're like, man, I'm nobody.
Oh, especially like when you see. Like, I remember being on the road and being like, yeah, my meet and greets are aggressive. And then I remember one day I was at the Ice House with Joe, and I thought we were done for the night. It was like me, Joe, and Tom, I think. I thought we were done for the night. And all of a sudden, I realized every single person in that room is in line to take a picture with Joe. No one knows who I am. No one knows who I am.
Yeah.
And they all want to take a picture with Joe, and they all want to tell Joe their story of why he's so important to them.
Right.
And I remember seeing that going, I don't know what I'm complaining about with meet and greets.
Right.
Like, this is next level.
Yeah.
This is something I can't wrap my head around.
Yeah.
And I think that really, like, he's one of those guys that's just inspirational, I think, to all of us, because you're like, he really is doing his own fucking thing.
Yeah.
Like, no one's he has no boss. He's doing podcasts in Spanish.
Right.
Like, he's just fucking next level.
Right.
It's hard to be friends with a guy like that, because you really do have to compartmentalize the advice you get from someone like that, because they are driven, they are focused, but and you can very easily get swept up in him and just be like everything Joe says is right, because, by the way, it's really close to right a lot of times.
Right.
And then it's really hard to be your own man and go, oh no, I think I can run a marathon with no training, and be like, oh fuck it, I'll do it.
How do you decide how to quench your hunger for like, I heard you talking about you want to own an island, you've had all of these, you want to have a compound, all of that stuff.
Yes.
You still want all that stuff?
Yes.
What drives you to that? Do you think that you'll ever reach a point of contentment prior to that, or do you look at somebody like Joe and his success and kind of, are you trying to attain that success? Or
I think I want to do it in my own. It's an interesting question, because I think there are a lot of people in this business, and I think, once again, we talk about those people that are writing those knockoff songs. There are a lot of people that watch Bill or Joe, and I'd say those are the two probably biggest guys in our industry right now. And they watch what they're doing, and they try to replicate exactly what they're doing.
Right.
Like, there's guys trying to do a podcast because Joe does one. Right. By the way, I'm also that guy. I did a podcast because Joe told me to do it. Like, he said, you need to do a podcast.
Right.
And I was like, oh, okay. And then I bought all the equipment, and then literally Tom Segura and Joey Diaz drove to my house, hit record, and said, you're doing a podcast. So I'm not like an original guy like that. My podcast is birthed out of the fact that I loved Joe's, I loved Tom's, I loved Ari's, I loved Joey's.
Right.
I loved what they were doing, and I just copied them.
Well, I'm sure that Joe Rogan would tell you that his was birthed out of something as well.
Yeah, he always says it was birthed out of Opie and Anthony.
Yeah, there you go.
Is that he listened to Opie and Anthony, he loved The Hang,
right,
and that's why he started the podcast.
But for somebody like me, I look at what you have going on, and to me, and listen, I've had my own arc in the music industry. I've had the 8,000 square foot mansion with an elevator and all of that crazy stuff.
Yeah.
Way too many air conditioners to even wrap your head around. And I reached a point where none of that, all of those things that I wanted, the private gated community and all this stuff, none of it was fulfilling what I thought it was going to fulfill. I'm interested to watch where you go as you keep growing this stuff.
That's really interesting you say that, because I think I'm on the precipice of wondering, I said this in therapy today. I was like, will the big house be the itch I need? Like, I'm really happy in this house. I really love this house. Right. I love that we can. Are we okay? Oh, I thought you said. I love that I wake up and I yell, Leanne, and she can hear me.
Yeah.
Like, our house was smaller than this before, and when we first built it out to this size, I went, oh, I don't like that I can't hear the girls do everything.
Right.
And I was like, oh, I don't know if I like this big enough house. And now I'm at a place where I go, do I want a bigger house? Do I want nicer cars? or am I really just happy? Like I'm really happy.
That's an incredibly important question to ask yourself, especially once you start getting success, because it's very easy, once that momentum picks up and different channels of income start coming in, and you know what it's like. Once you make the first X amount, then it starts becoming easier and easier to kind of start parlaying that and making more and more.
Yeah.
And you really have to keep yourself in check, because otherwise one day you just wake up and all you think about is, fuck, I've got 6 air conditioners. What if one of these things falls through?
Yeah.
And,
what if I don't ever want to be there? Like right now I get a check from a weekend of doing stand up and I'm still like, I still go, holy shit. Like Segura and I were talking about this the other day. And we were like, when it's night, when you add shows, it's really nice. You go, wow, I'm adding a show. Usually you get 100% of the door, and you can do the math, but I'll just tell you what it is. It's like, it's an extra 10 grand.
Right.
Like free. Like
right.
and to add a show. So when you add a show, Segura and I are both like, yeah.
Right. Literally by saying yes.
Yeah, by going, yeah, let's add a show. And you know that if it's sold out 2 weeks ahead of time, you're going to sell 250 tickets over 2 weeks. It's like,
right.
And so we were talking about how great that is and how at one point that one show wasn't what we were ever making on the road for a month.
Right.
And then you go, the key is, and he's making a great deal of money right now, but the key is to not overextend yourself so that you look at that added show as the norm.
Right.
And like we were, and then we were talking
or you
about,
start wishing for that added show, that when you start going, shit, I hope we can add one more show because
I need
this shit's expensive.
Yeah.
That sucks.
Yeah. I don't want to be there. I don't ever want to get there. Our mortgage is nothing. Our mortgage is like $2,500.
Yeah, dude. I paid my house off and it's
that's Bill Burr mentality.
That's the best day of your life.
I would like to pay I don't know if I can. I would like to pay my house off and own it free and clear. I don't know if that'll happen. But then part of me goes, what if I could get myself to the next level in a house maybe, right, where we still have a low mortgage, like we put a bunch of money down and still have a low mortgage, and then we have a really nice house. Like my buddies just bought, one of my buddies just bought like a $2.5 million house, right? Really nice, really nice in the valley, just huge, legit huge. And then all of a sudden, one of the lead guys for this movie that he was working on, it wasn't happening. Like, I'm getting stressed out just thinking about what you're going to tell me. And the movie started going away, and he was like, "Oh my god, that can't happen." Like, I've got, $15,000 I have to pay in mortgage every month or whatever.
Right.
And he's like, luckily the movie went, but there was a week where he was really tough to be around.
Yeah.
And I saw that and I was like, I don't want that.
Imagine writing jokes under that kind of pressure.
And that's what the music industry is.
Absolutely.
Because the music industry in a weird way is just like flaunt it. Like get the nice house, get the sports car.
It is. And that's you've just described exactly where I'm at in my career. Is I have finally just gotten fed up with that, because in my business, none of it's real. We were talking about this on my podcast the other day. Out of all the rock stars that I know, all of the famous people that I know, I don't know one of them. You're going to be the first one. I don't know one of them where their Instagram or their social media account is real, that it's actually what their life is like, because they're all fucking stressed out and they're all, dealing with real life things. I don't understand why once we get some success, we feel the need to even polish it up more and make it look more unreal than it is. That seems so unusual to me. That's why I appreciate what you're doing, because you're no bullshit. In my business, I just feel like I'm just constantly surrounded by bullshit.
Yeah, there's a lot of bullshit on our side of it. I was talking to D'Elia about it the other day, and Chris D'Elia is just very funny. So on his Instagram, he's just being funny. He doesn't do shit like sold out show, So shows sold out this weekend, which is one of the, like, why are you posting that? Like, why are you telling people your shows are sold out?
Right.
If you're adding a show, tell people you're added a show.
Right,
but don't be like, shows are sold out, you know, like, what's up, guys?
Yeah.
Like, and a lot of people do that. They'll just put a tweet, sold out show, and you're like,
I don't understand what purpose that serves. I mean, literally,
it makes
if
you feel good.
and
I've done it, by the way. I've done it.
It makes you feel good, but at the expense of almost everyone that's tuning in to watch you, because it just makes them feel shitty about themselves.
Every comic goes like, "Oh, great! I know you're doing great." Like it's a reflection. We look at ourselves inwardly, and we're like, "Oh, great!" But then, I guess the theory is that fans see it and they're like, "Oh, I got to get tickets. His shows sell out." I guess.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know. I've done it. Like I did it. I did it out of pride. I went to Australia and I sold out like 5 cities, and they were all like, I think the smallest one we did was like 900 seats, and I was really proud of that. And I felt like this is, by the way, this is ego talking entirely. I felt like no one's gonna know that I had sold out shows in Australia if I don't tell them.
Hey, listen, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with boasting about that stuff. We work very hard.
I was like, if a tree falls in the forest, does anyone know that it was sold out? And I just was like, fuck this. And I took video and I was like, sold out fucking shows. And
listen, there's nothing wrong with that. I think what I'm getting at is there's nothing wrong with being proud of what you do. You work hard.
With it, but then there's also, it is married to like, it is married to this narcissism.
Yeah.
It's nothing. There's one thing to be proud about it, but like, then it's also like not to bring up Tom so much in this podcast, but Tom will never tell you if he sold out a show. Like, he just does not give a fuck. Bill Burr will never post that shows are sold out.
Right.
He just won't do it. If his show's added, he'll tell you. I remember when this is my favorite Bill Burr quote. By the way, and I'm probably misquoting it. So when you're a comic, the levels of comic are, you get like $1,000 is like first buy-in, and then you get to like $2,000, and you get to $3,000, and you get $3,000 in bonuses.
Right.
Then you get like $5,000 in bonus, $4,000 bonuses, higher bonuses. When you get to like $6,000, you could argue you could get a percent. You could start negotiating a percentage deal, but for, like, in a weird way, for some reason, $6,000 is where you stop getting. Like, it's $6,000 in bonuses, and then it's a flat buyout for $10,000.
Right.
Like, it just jumps because there aren't people that sell tickets in between that. There's no one that's
so
doing,
$10,000 is kind of the ceiling for
Once you want $10,000 is like, I swear to God.
Are you talking clubs?
Yeah, clubs. Yeah,
okay.
just clubs. Theaters get really confusing.
Okay.
So you go like $6,000, and then all of a sudden you make a leap from $6,000 to $10,000. It's like a $10,000 buyout because they figure anyone who's making $6,000 is probably going to hit their bonuses, does pretty good radio, and then in a weird way, the agents just negotiate to $10,000. So then you do $10,000. So you're like, okay, and then the leap goes, and there's some comics that just go, I want to buy out. Like, give me $15,000. That's all I want. You know, I don't want to worry about ticket prices. I don't want to have to worry about promoting it. That's on you.
Yeah, I get it.
Give me $5,000. There are guys like that. Like, I would say, I'm not gonna say names, but like some older SNL guys are just like, I don't want to deal with the fucking headache of promoting shows. Just give me a buyout, even if it's like $5,000 less than what I could get if I had a door deal.
Right.
But then you get door deals. And once you get door deals, you start getting emails from your agents every day about your tickets.
Right.
They give. Dilly and I were talking about this yesterday. And you, like, especially you're doing a theater, like I'm doing a theater this weekend, and I'm watching. It sold 96% like a month ago.
Right.
And then I think they opened up 200 seats that they didn't think they were going to sell.
Right.
And because it was sold out for so long, I think people didn't know about it. So these last 200 have just been moving like fucking a snail. Jeez. So I look at it every day. I always get an email.
And that's not good.
Right? Watch. I'll tell you exactly how many tickets I sold yesterday. This is, by the way, I find this is my favorite. Dilly and I were like literally bullshitting about this. I go to type in ticket, and it comes up. Jesus Christ. I guess I'm got a lot of offers to go to Rocket Games. Oh, I spelled ticket wrong. I'm a fucking idiot. I think I got CTE. Here. Okay, ready? So, Jesus, did I spell it again wrong?
TICK.
Okay. So Brandon Norman sends me my ticket counts every day. Shout out to Brandon Norman at UTA. And so I open it up. I'm with Dalia, and I look, and I sold 9 tickets yesterday. Right? We're still, like, now we're 100 tickets away.
How do you feel about that?
We're 100 tickets away. We're less than 100 tickets away. We are 90 tickets away from being sold out. But I go, 9 fucking tickets?
Yeah, it's like, fuck, only 9 people care about me today?
But I go, okay, those shows are, okay, that's moving nicely. Okay. And then I'm like, I'm a little worried about Laugh Out Loud Comedy Club in San Antonio.
Oh, you're getting way too deep into this.
It's because you start.
It's terrible.
And then you go, okay, I got to do a promo video to promote that, because then the club will get it. They'll blow it out to their fans.
Right.
And so I go, okay. So one night I'm talking to Bill Burr, and I go, you get your ticket count still? And he just smiles. He goes, nah. I said, you don't stress about that shit? And he goes, Bert, they all sell out. And I said, get me to that place in my life where you just go. By the way, Bill Burr doesn't give a fuck. If
awesome.
He's short 100 tickets, he doesn't care.
Right.
That's fucking. So what? I lose $1,000, $2,000. If Bill Burr's second show sells half, he goes, fine, I'll do a show for half.
He doesn't care.
He does not give a fuck. And Segura's that way, Joe's that way. But Dalia and I were like, oh yeah. I look at ticket counts.
Sure, right.
Like it's almost fun because you work so hard in this business.
Yeah, listen, it is fun to be able to watch the business working. There's no question about that.
Oh yeah.
There's a publishing company that I'm looking at right now that has an app that literally, dude, in real time tells you how much your song is making. And so I was in a meeting with them, and they pulled it up and says, "You want?" I forget the artist. Let's just say like Drake. You want to see how much this song, whatever it is, whatever the title is by Drake, pulls it up, and it's just like a fucking ticker tape. It's just going and going and going. I'm like getting anxiety watching the dollars just fly into this kid's bank account.
I would love that.
I know you would.
I would love that.
You'd love it for a few minutes, and then it would just be brutal because then you start seeing it slow down, and you're like, what do I do? I was
obsessed with, and everyone that knows my podcast knows what I'm about to say. I was obsessed with a thing called Google Trends. So Google Trends would track your popularity online, and you'd watch yourself spike. And so you knew that if you did something big, you'd spike. And I was obsessed with it. I would go on every day. I would check out how many people were Googling me that day, over the week, over the month, over 10 years. And I would watch it. And then I'd compare myself to other people and go, ooh, that person, name, I won't say right now, had a Netflix special, and all of a sudden I haven't even been on Netflix, and I'm bigger than that person?
Right.
Oh, nice. Okay. Yeah. All right. This one had I remember Christina Pajinski outspiked me, and I went, okay, good.
Right.
She had a Netflix special, and I remember thinking, if I get a Netflix special, I could spike where she's at. I was like, nice, okay. And then I'd watch Tommy, and I'd see him spike when his special aired, and I'd be like, yeah, I got to get on Netflix. And so I'd track it, and then it got to the point where I went, I'm never touching it again. I'm never looking at it again, because I don't think it's healthy. Because what was happening was I was almost like stuck on a treadmill, going like, I got a spike today.
Oh, it's rough, man. I had a similar experience just watching the charts. Watching my songs climb the charts. And the first few times you're watching the songs climb the charts, it's very exciting. You get pumped up. You're like, I can do more of this. Yeah. And then it gets to the top, and you're like, I'm king of the world. And then it starts going minus spins, and it starts, because inevitably everything starts dropping. And the minute it reaches its peak and starts going down, it gets so fucking hard to get back in the studio and write something. You're like, why should I write a song? They don't care about me. They've already stopped. They've stopped listening to me. They don't care. It's such a rejection. It's a terrible thing to do. It's a terrible. It's so.
It's fleeting.
Addictive.
Everything's fleeting.
It is.
I remember when I first started selling tickets this last year or whatever. I talking about Tommy a lot. I made fun of him pretty bad in the open, but I remember saying to him, like, how long does it last? And he goes, if you keep working hard, it stays around here. And he was like, and I go, I feel like it's fleeting. It stays
around like a certain point.
You can always do clubs. You can always do clubs. Theaters are, and the next conversation, will you go to theaters? How can you go to bigger theaters?
Right.
You see guys like Sebastian doing 18,000 seats in a venue. You see Rogan doing, fucking 10,000 seats in a venue, getting stuck in traffic jams.
Right.
And you go, okay, will I get there? And then I remember Tommy and I going like, we're cool here. We're cool with clubs.
Yeah.
We're cool at clubs. Let me do a theater run, and I'll do one of those, and then I'll go back to clubs. And then, you know what? And then I'll do another theater run, and then back to clubs. And so, but there is the weird feeling that, is it fleeting? Is it disappearing? Are you out of, and then it gets unhealthy. You start cannibalizing your life by putting everything on Twitter and Instagram and getting online and flipping online. And you're not living a real life that was the guy that you were when you started writing material.
Right.
Which is something you said in your podcast. The one I listened to was that you become this, you lose the kid that moved out here to follow the dream. Yeah,
absolutely. I find more often than not now, I have to go back to earlier stuff that I did, earlier songs that I did.
So funny. We were cleaning my fucking man cave out today, and I had a joke book that said, fuck bitches, make money.
Right.
And immediately Leanne's like, you should keep that, because that's whatever brain wrote on the front of their notebook, fuck bitches, make money.
Yeah. That was a dude on his way up. That was a dude that was hungry.
Yeah.
And it was creative. And I do that a lot now. And you know, I think that for me personally, I had to find my level of success that worked well for me, and it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. It wasn't the mansion, it wasn't the island, it wasn't private jets and all that shit. Fortunately, I got to do all of that stuff. Well, not the island, but I got to do all of that, and I very quickly realized, oh, this is just not at all what I thought it was going to be. And you just got to find where your plateau is. And then I think that if you're smart and you're talented, you can sustain that plateau as long as you need to.
And if you don't invest too much of your personality into it, if you don't invest I remember Patrice O'Neill told me one time, it's all about raising your base. He goes, right now, my base, he goes, they can't take stuff away from me. He goes, my base at the time was, I can go out and I can make $2,000 every week for an entire year.
Right.
And no one can take that away from me.
Right.
And he goes, all I want to do is raise my base. At the time I got a sitcom. He goes, your problem is you got launched up here where you're making X amount of dollars a week, and they can take that away from you. And when they take that away from you, Bert, I remember him saying, like, Bert, you go back to work in the door. Like, you don't have a base.
Right.
You need to create a base. My base at one point, this is going to sound so silly, was town cars. Like, the fact that I could get in a town car. I remember being like in that town car one time and going, they can totally take this away from me.
Yeah.
Like I like riding in town cars. I like not driving. I like going to work in a town car and then coming home and not having to worry about, and I can have drinks.
Yeah.
I like that. And I remember I was driving, it was right when Bert the Conqueror was getting canceled, and I was driving out to what's the theme park about the berries?
Knott's Berry
Farm.
Right.
And I was in a town car, and I thought, this is going away. This is rich people
living.
See, that
sucks. That feeling, that reality sucks, and it can take the joy out of any moment.
Yeah, it takes, because you do fly in a private jet, and you go, so this is the one time I get to do this, or this will never happen again.
Right.
You don't want your personality attached to it,
right?
So that you're like, so that it has to be the norm, because then the bottom out, like, there's still guys that fly coach and they go, I don't ever want to taste the fucking nectar that's first class.
Right.
And it's really fucking fascinating to me. I think about that, but the
thing about those things, like the town car, the private jet, a lot of that stuff, we've all experienced that. But how often has it actually been on our dime? It's usually because somebody has flown you out someplace, or the promoter needs you. Like we took private jets a few times on tour, and of course it's always great, but it's usually because you have to get from one place to another, and somebody's footing the bill for that. Not you, not your performance, not anything about you, but you get kind of sucked into that. I mean, obviously town cars, we end up paying for town cars, but it's almost like that drug. You get little tastes of that drug, and you think, ooh, this is great, without any sense that I didn't earn one bit of this. I've ridden on a lot of private jets. I've never earned a private jet in my life.
Oh, I've never paid for a private jet.
In fact, one time we were on tour and there was a problem with the bus, and I thought, oh, you know what, we'll just charter a private jet. I'll call my brother and he works for NetJets. And he called me. It was literally like a half-hour flight, and he's like, yeah, I think I can give it to you guys for about $70,000. I was like, you got to be kidding me. You're my brother. He's like, that's a discount, dude.
Dude, at one point I planned a tour on a tour bus because I've always wanted a tour bus. I was like, I want to get a tour bus. I'm going to go start in Miami, go to West Palm, Fort Lauderdale, Tampa, Orlando, Jacksonville, Atlanta, work my way up the coast, DC, Philly, New York, Boston. And I was like, yep. And so I write, like, not a proposal, but I write out my plans, send it to my agents, send it to my managers, CC my wife, and my manager, Judy, it is just very pragmatic, and she texts back, emails in the email. It would be cheap, just so you know, it would be cheaper for you to Uber to these places right. than it will be for you to get a tour bus. Now she goes, you will make no money.
Right.
And she's like, so just so you know, you can do this, but you'll lose money doing this.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, why would I fucking do that?
Yeah.
She was like, yeah, it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And then you look at people on tour buses and you're like, a lot of times it's like, I got offered a tour bus for a tour I was going to do, but it was given to me by the promoter.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, so that's what I need to do.
Yeah, that's the only way to do it. I was on tour a couple of years ago, and I'm an avid golfer, and I was I'd been on the road a long time, traveling in a tour bus, very nice situation. It was very cushy, and I was in my bunk one night, and I was talking to a few of my buddies, saying we got to plan a golf trip. Once this tour is done, let's do this. I'll get us a tour bus and we'll go hit all of these different points in Florida. It'll be awesome.
Yeah.
Then I started running the numbers on it. I thought, this is just ridiculous.
It really is. It really is. It's so much more cost effective to fly first class to New York than it is to get in a tour bus and drive to New York.
Absolutely.
It really does. It costs $400 to fly to Sacramento from LA first class,
right?
$400.
Yeah.
Or you can get a tour bus and it'll cost you $20,000.
Exactly.
And you're like, well, I'm just gonna fly and then fly home. Fuck it.
Right.
As opposed to, I don't know. I still have I've had my heart set on a tour bus. So talk to me if you could about the leap from songwriter, almost producer, putting out your own solo albums to getting into a band and being like a legit.
Well, I had produced a few rock bands in a row. I'd produced let's see, I think I was producing the Scorpions record at the time, and Nicky from Motley Crue. I'd become friends with him because I had
the best looking of the group.
Arguably.
Yeah, not even arguably anymore. Poor Tommy Lee. Did you see the thing about Tommy Lee and his son?
Yeah, that was
they got into
terrible.
a fight.
That was terrible.
See, my problem is I have always had an affinity for Tommy Lee.
He's a wonderful guy.
And part of me says I don't want him to quit drinking. Like, I like that he still drinks. And I know that sounds like he's got a problem with it. But part of me is like, no, man, because once you quit, then we all got to quit.
Yeah, listen, he is. I'll tell you this: I've known Tommy sober, and I've known him not sober, and he's a lovely guy, no matter what. And he's just a great spirit. So for me, I prefer him sober just because it's healthier, and for anyone that eventually drinking is going to start wearing you down as well.
I've cut back so drastically,
but you're one of these guys that it's not a problem. You're actually joyful to be around when you're drinking. It's that's the way I was. I was a fucking happy drunk, man. I was a blast when I was drinking. But also I just reached a point where, because of my lifestyle, because of the career that I was in, I could start drinking at 10 in the morning, and I did.
That crept up on me. And that Australian tour was the first time it really happened, where I could drink whenever I wanted, and it was Australia, so it was a little acceptable.
Yeah.
And by the way, it's sold out venues that is just my fans. So if I did have a buzz on stage, no one really gave a fuck.
Yeah.
And like, I mean, I went on TV and I drank beer out of a shoe, and they were like, the one place, Melbourne, that we were having a hard time moving tickets, sold out immediately.
Right.
So like, you're like, oh, okay, it's Australia. And I was flying every day and performing every night. So I get to the airport, I'd have a cocktail at the airport, a couple cocktails on the plane, land, take a nap, cocktails at the show. And then I had 2 days off in Sydney, but I'm on this regiment of cocktails in the morning, and I got a day off. Cocktail in the morning. By the way,
there's nothing better than drinking in the morning, man.
Oh my God. And I was like, oh, okay, this is caught up to me. And then I started to be like, okay, we got a new rule. There's no more drinking in the morning unless you got a few days to rebound this off.
Yeah.
Like you can't drink in the morning and then get right back out and start working again.
Yeah.
And so, that caught up to me. And then we did that sober October. We did a big sober October.
How'd that go,
thing.
By the way?
It was great. It was great, and I think I learned a lot. But mostly, what I learned is there's no, and I think people don't know this about me or do know. It doesn't really matter. Like I heard one guy said something online, and I was like, bro, you don't know me. Like you don't hang out with me, and I don't hang out with you. So like he was like, you got to stop drinking. You're gonna die in like a month. And I was like, hold on. You don't know me. Like you don't realize what I do know.
Yeah,
and then I told him, I said, you need to stop roller skating. And he wrote back, I don't roller skate. I go, how would I not know that? I thought we knew each other. Like,
yeah.
And so like now the one thing I accrued from it was not drinking on the road on nights I don't need to drink. Like a Saturday night, I won't drink. I'll go back and I'll get sleep and get on the flight home. Not drinking at home. Like right. I don't drink at home really. And so
like, you've got that part figured out.
I just don't drink at home. So like if I'm home, like tonight I'm doing a private event and I'm certain they brought me there to have drinks. So I'll have drinks. I don't care. I'm working. But like I didn't drink for the last 14 days while I was home.
Right.
Well, we were sick, but I don't need to drink.
Well, for me with I've got a pretty excessive personality. I don't really have an addictive personality, but I've got an excessive personality, especially with my bipolar. So I have these manic things that are just like insane happiness. Like I wish everyone that I know and love could experience that level of happiness because it's awesome.
We call it firing hot.
Yeah, dude.
And then we found out it was my thyroid. I had an overactive thyroid. And what would happen to me is I would fire hot, and it would be I'm being dead serious when I say this, and I think I have it too. It would be I was so on fire I could start a religion and you would join it. Like I could start a religion. I remember one time I was on a boat in Lake Havasu with a group with 12 people, or maybe it was probably like 15 people, and it was all for my crew, and I was watching my friends that I had known for the 5 years we had toured together on this TV show, and they were watching me like, this is magic. Bert is in a zone right now.
You're killing it.
And I was killing it. Right. I got us all in. We listened to In Excess. We all held hands and sang it to each other, and like people are crying, and they're like, oh my God, what the fuck are you doing? And I was like, yeah. I flew home that night. I got home and I threw up uncontrollably. I was physically ill for 2 days, and I had taken all that positive energy and I had borrowed it from 2 days, and I was in a downhole. I was in a spiral that I could not get the fuck out of.
Dude, it's rough. And something that that people like us who have a certain level of success, and I don't know what your situation is, but when you reach a point where you're not thinking about money every day, and you're a drinker, and you can be an excessive drinker, that's where it got dangerous for me.
Really?
Because I love to treat people I love, my favorite thing is to take people out, my friends out for dinners, and spend lots of money on them and make them feel good, and like for me, I was a pretty heavy drinker, but like I said, I was always fun to be around. I had a lot of those type of religious moments where I was just fucking killing it, and you wake up the next day and you're like, man, I was a star last night. And until one day my accountant called me, not my business manager, who this was his business to do, but my accountant, who literally just does my taxes. And he says, James, I stay out of your business most of the time. You know that, right? And I was like, yeah. And he goes, how the fuck can you spend $1,200 at a Buffalo Wild Wings? And I was just like, oh man, yeah, this is bad. And it was just because I was just out buying drinks for people, and it was just me and a couple of guys. And so for me, my decision to stop drinking was literally a financial decision. Nobody ever sat me down and said, you're drinking too much.
Yeah.
For me, it was just like, because you pair that with those manic episodes that I go through, the decision making was just through the roof crazy. And so for me, stopping drinking was the best thing that I ever did.
Decision. I haven't paid for a drink.
See, I was wondering about that. That's got to be.
I haven't paid for a drink. I haven't paid for a drink. I mean, and we're talking about, I haven't paid for a drink. Jesus. This is a very interesting pause here. I really couldn't tell you.
See, that's some serious stuff right there.
Well, that's where it's problematic, because everyone wants to buy me a drink. Even times where you would buy a drink, like I fly a lot, so even when I'm at in the Admirals Club for American, well, first of all my drinks are free because I'm of my status. Yeah. So I don't have to pay. And like you go into the lounge and it's it's a bar. Beyond, it's a next level.
You've flown a lot, huh?
I fly fucking. Jeez. Yeah. If it was for Travel Channel, was what really.
Oh
did
yeah,
it.
Of course.
Because they were all first class tickets. So I had a month where I flew back and forth from Italy 4 times.
Good
and
Lord.
so those are $20,000 tickets.
Yeah.
So or probably 12,000 or 11,000, maybe 9. But anyway, so where I go, it's a full bar and you make your own cocktails in American. But yeah, I just I
was wondering about that with you. I mean, that's you're kind of locked into it now.
Well, at the store, at the store, I'll go and I'll get a drink, and they don't make you pay, but I'll give the guys $20 or something. Right. I'll tip them out $20 every time I get a drink, just because I have money. You're making money at the store.
Yeah.
I try not to leave home with that money. I try to give it to the guys working there.
Right.
Yeah. So I think I don't really buy drinks, and we don't really go out to eat, like me and my family, and I don't really drink with the girls. Like I'll have, if we have friends over, I'll have a drink or something, or I'll drink, but yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, see, that's a big difference. About a year or two before I stopped drinking, we were doing my taxes, and I had $14,000 of alcohol alone on taxes, and I thought, this is just. But that was just normal,
Yeah.
That was just, if you were paying for your own drinks, I guarantee you'd be 3 times that.
Well, anytime I get to a club, there's a handle of Tito's waiting for me.
Yeah.
And then at the club, usually they'll set up a bar in the green room for me.
Yeah.
But I don't drink before I go on stage. I don't drink on stage. I'll bring a Tito's and soda with me on stage. Won't touch it. I'll drink it on the late show when I start telling the machine story. And then I leave that Tito's there in the green room. Usually Tito's sends me Tito's to my hotel room.
Right.
And then, their local reps will be like, oh, I know you're in town. I'll send you a snowboard or whatever. They send me weird shit sometimes.
Right.
But usually it's a package with a couple bottles of Tito's and some glasses. And then I drink at the club for free. And that would be all my drinking for the weekend, would be at the club or at the airport. And those are all taken care of.
Right.
And,
I gotta say, binge watching your podcast, it's made me miss drinking. Not in a bad way.
Yeah.
I'm living vicariously through you, because just to see you pour those big glasses of Tito's.
That was I had to stop with. I was making 32-ounce Tito's and sodas.
Yeah.
That was really catching up to me.
Yeah.
I remember someone said to me, I'm not going to tell you the idea of the show, but I'm doing another show. I'll tell you off air. I don't even know if I can. We were saying in the premise of the show, we were saying, someone said, we were talking about me and a couple guys and a bottle of Jack Daniels.
Right.
And someone said that would be like 5 drinks per person. And I went, by the way, just so you know, my first drink is 5 drinks.
Yeah,
my first drink
surprised.
is 5 drinks. Like Like I've poured 5 drinks for my first drink, so like yeah, I think we're good.
Yeah.
But I've pulled that back, and I think I pulled that back astronomically. Mostly, I think I just set up little things like the marathon for me was like a good reason not to drink.
Yeah.
So I go, oh, fuck it. I know who wants to drink if you're going to be running a marathon.
You've done it, right?
I'll do it this week.
Oh, it's coming up.
Yeah, but I'll be there's a perfect example. It's Friday night. I'm in Grand Rapids, and Founders Brewery is one of my favorite places in the world. And
Yeah.
and I don't even really drink beer anymore, but I'll have beers that night.
Yeah.
On Friday night. I won't drink on the flight home Saturday. I won't drink Saturday at all. And then...
See, drinking on flights was one of my favorite. Drinking in airport bars, one of my favorite things, and then drinking on flights was one of my favorite things. I think it's something about the altitude.
Drinking on planes is pretty fucking.
It's
amazing.
awesome.
It's pretty fucking amazing.
You solve all the world's problems. I love it.
I might drink Friday morning when I do the radio show. I might drink Founders Friday morning and then sleep, do the show, not drink, get up early for my flight, fly home sober Saturday, don't drink all Saturday, run the marathon Sunday morning. Yeah, that's what I'll probably do.
Are you seriously going to drink the day before the marathon?
No. Saturday I won't drink.
Okay.
I might in the morning, but I won't drink at night. I don't know. I did half marathons like this though.
So
but the weeks leading up, as long as I'm not drinking a lot weeks leading up, then
by the way, you're in great shape.
I'm in
Do you don't feel like you're in great shape?
I'm in great shape right now. I feel really good.
Yeah, you look
I feel
great.
better than I've felt in a long time. But wait, I want to get back to the band and
yeah,
how you met Nikki.
So I ended up writing and producing the last Motley Crue record where all 4 original members performed together on it, and we didn't know if we were going to be able to pull it off because they weren't all getting along. So I kind of got thrown into the middle of that and was able to successfully bring it together and create a really great record, actually, called Saints of Los Angeles. And during that time, Nikki and I had become really close friends, and we're starting to write a lot of songs together. And one thing led to another, and we just decided to start this little side project. And the whole point of the side project was to kind of push the boundaries of music. We all were doing very well in our day jobs, so to speak. So let's create this thing where we can kind of push the boundaries, break the rules a little bit, not really do what's going on in the music industry. And that side project turned into the band 6 a.m. And we ended up just completely accidentally with a hit song called Life is Beautiful, which took me by surprise. I wasn't even supposed to be the singer in the band. I was just going to be writing and producing it. And then we figured that if something were to happen, I would help them audition singers. But I have a pretty broad vocal range, and so when it came time to consider finding somebody to actually sing it, it was tough. It was tough to find a male vocalist that could hit all of those notes and reach those ranges. So I just kind of decided, well, I'll go ahead and just be the singer in this project. We're not going to tour. We're not going to do anything. Well, then lo and behold, we end up getting a hit song. And then we had to shoot a video. And this isn't really a band, but okay, I'll go ahead and shoot the video. So we shoot a video, and then we get another hit song, and we're like, we're still not really a band, but sure, I'll shoot the next video. And that's how 6 a.m. kind of unfolded. Was just, it was a labor of love, and we had no expectations for it. And it ended up, we are now 5 studio albums in, a decade-long career, and and it's been wonderful. I mean, I've toured the world. I've played night after night for 80,000 people, and big festivals and stuff, and it's just been an incredible experience. But certainly not something that it was something that I was counting on happening in my 20s, but not in my 40s.
Yeah, that's insane. Was it what you thought it would be?
Parts of it, yes. There is, this, and anybody that has been able to perform in front of a large audience and really dominate, really kill it, there is no greater feeling in the world. Like when you walk off stage and you're like, I fucking killed it. Yeah. It is godly. and it fills your head with all sorts of chemicals that nothing else on this planet can do. You know what that's like. And that can become very addictive. That part of it, I mean, everything that you can possibly imagine about that, absolutely, 100% yes. Yeah. All of the fantasies about being a rock star, they're all there. They're all real. But along with that, for somebody like me, I really don't like. I don't like presenting myself in a way that's not really me. Yeah. I found that every ounce of who I was presenting myself as was not the real me. I was playing a character. For 10 years, I played a character, and it broke my heart because I'm a pretty honest guy, and I like to have real conversations with people about real things, and I'm very interested in I'm very interested in just the dynamics of life and how people interact and stuff. You don't get to do any of that stuff when you're playing a character all the time. So that part of it was really disappointing to me. And the part that I found the most troubling was the fact that fans were buying into that. When I would meet fans and they would pour their heart out to me about how a song that I had written had affected them, it made me feel like a fraud. Yeah. And that part was really hard for me. I'm still struggling with that. And that's partially why that's a big reason why I'm doing the podcast now. And I'm trying to find forums where I can just be myself, and not be wearing the eyeliner and doing all the stuff that you have to do when you're in that world. I'm trying to carve out a career for the second half of my career where I can still experience some of those great things, but do it on my terms and do it in a way that is honest and that I don't feel like a fraud. Yeah. I think that we feel that in stand-up. I think podcasting's kept me sane. I can imagine. Because all the stuff I share, I mean, I'm in workout clothes. I'm not like dressed. I know this is I'm on camera, but I'm not like, I never really thought of that people would be like, why is Bert, like someone's like, you play with your toes a lot. And I was like, oh, that's who I am. See, I got to tell you, Bert, I love that. And I mean this from the bottom of my heart. You're actually a huge inspiration to me for this transitional stage of my life. Oh, thank you. Because I watch how you talk about life. I watch how you talk about your family, and just the level of honesty and sincerity about that, without any filters, is something that I am craving in my life. And it's so funny you say that, because I was listening to you talk about how you find Los Angeles to be a soulful place. Yeah, and I was like, I don't see the life like that. Like, I look at Los Angeles. I'm such a cynic at times that I just look at I have a hard time seeing the beauty of things. Right. Like, I remember, this is my view of Los Angeles is I go, there's so many people that came out here with a dream. Like, their dream was attached to their happiness was attached to a dream. Right. And so many people don't get their dream that you do run into the negativity of the dream killers. That's the first thing you run into. Yeah. And then you were like, oh, I find Los Angeles to be such a soulful place. And then I started thinking to myself, hold on. Wait, when I came out with a dream, I thought it was a soulful place too. I was like, wait, what's happening to me that now I just see dream killers? Listen, that's the real, but what I meant by that, and I firmly believe this, is that you just described it. People come here for one reason: to become a star. We both know that to fix all their problems, right? And to change who they are and become the version that they always wanted to be of themselves. But we both know that the odds of that happening are so slim. Ugh. 1 in a million, whatever it may be. So most people come out here, they go through a terrible, crushing heartbreak of a shattering of their dreams, and then they eventually leave. They go back to where they came from, and they pick up the pieces, and they try to make sense of it all. But for the few people that stay out here and stick it out, even though their dreams have been crushed, they have to go through a level of soul searching just to stay sane that most people will never go through in their lives. Yeah. And those people, have created a community out here of what I believe are some of the most soulful people on the planet.
My wife.
There you go. That's a perfect example.
Yeah. As you're saying that, I'm thinking, Leanne came out to be an actress, ended up then shifting into being a writer, had some success as a writer, and then got pregnant.
Yeah.
And then was a mom for 13 years.
Yeah.
Just floating around, and did all she's done is soul searching. That's all she's ever done. And she sees things differently. I remember there was this guy who was quitting acting and comedy, and he was moving home, and they were having a goodbye party for him, and I thought, wow, that's so funny. And any other city you go to, a going away party, like a goodbye party, a bon voyage party, is always so exciting. Yeah. Congrats, man. Have fun in LA. I hope you do it. But in LA, it's the exact opposite, where you're like, so I guess you're giving up.
It's soul crushing.
It's soul crushing. And Leanne said to me, oh no, how brave of him to decide this isn't where his life is going to be, and that he gets to start his life all over again. And I went, I didn't see that at all. I just saw him as giving up. She goes, no, you're looking at it wrong.
Yeah.
And I think it was because Leanne had to give up on her dream of being an actress or being a screenwriter or a movie producer, and transition into being a mother and a wife of a comedian who's following his dream.
Right.
And I think that's why she loves doing this podcast now, because she's like, oh yeah, like the dream's not dead. I get to do something creative.
Yeah.
You don't have, like, things have changed so much in this business that you can be creative in so many different venues.
Yeah.
And it's what I think is really cool about your podcast is that, like, we're inundated with comics talking about comedy and talking about life and talking about working out and fucking shitting their pants.
Right.
But there's very few people who have seen the life you've had and are talking about it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's honestly, it's the most important thing I've ever done in my career is this podcast.
Really?
It is very quickly becoming everything to me, because I have been craving talking honestly about life. Here's the ironic thing about it. I have spent my career writing songs that make me appear to be, this ultra sensitive guy, not that I listen, I write great songs and I connect with people. I know that I have the ability to write songs that connect with people and mean something to them. But the entire reason that I've been doing that is to, I don't know if this is actually what drives it or if it's just a byproduct of it, but people then think, oh my God, he's so sensitive, he's so honest, I would just love to be with somebody like that. And what I realized is that no, I was just doing that for ego. I was just doing that to make me feel good, to make me feel like I was important, to boost myself. We all do that. We all want to feel important. But the irony is that the very act of being a songwriter is an incredibly selfish thing. It destroyed a marriage of mine. It took me 20 years to achieve even half of the things that I wanted to achieve. And I think of all of the friendships that fell by the wayside, the marriage that fell by the wayside, the quality, relationships that I just kind of passed on because I was so focused on becoming this successful thing. And so now I'm finding that it's very cathartic for me to speak about it and open up about that a little bit and share with people. I'm not trying to pull back the curtain on anything. I'm not trying to throw people under the bus, but I won't feel good about myself unless I, am a bit more open and honest about how I got here and what that journey's actually been like. And I think by doing that, I'm realizing that that it's painting a slightly more realistic, expectation for people for young kids that are thinking about getting into this business.
I think, it's so funny is I talk about comedy a lot on my podcast, and I think people go, I think a lot of people that listen to it love comedy. and they love hearing the curtain pulled back. But I wonder what effect it has, because it's had a big effect on me and the way I write and the way I look at comedy. I wonder what effect it'll have on the next generation of comics that all grew up listening to their favorite comics. Like, if I could have started comedy and listened to Dave Attell talk about writing jokes for fucking an hour, I would listen to that every day.
Yeah.
I would listen to every episode every day, nonstop, over and over again.
That's right.
And I bet and my comedy has gotten better since I'm podcasting. I wonder if that'll happen with your songwriting and what it'll do to the next generations of songwriters.
Listen, this is exactly why I'm so hopeful about the future of your business and my business. I think it's about to get a lot better, because I'm older than you, but when we were coming up, you know, you were lucky if you could get a VHS tape that had some behind the scenes footage of something, you know. And now it's just all out there. Things like podcasts, there's so much more information out there for the next generation. I'm really excited about the next generation of artists, no matter what genre, no matter what field of art you're in. I'm so excited because they've got so much information at their fingertips. God. And, you know, it's fun for me to watch new bands coming up. You know, everything is cyclical. So, you know, every generation, there's a band that sounds like Led Zeppelin. There's a band that sounds like Aerosmith. There's, you know, it always comes back around, but it's always a new interpretation of that. Yeah. Probably the same thing in comedy. I mean, you got I don't know, like, who would you compare to, what is it, Lenny Bruce or one of those guys?
Well, I think it was Lenny Bruce, then it was Bill Hicks, then it was Stanhope. Yeah. Like, it kind of trickles down of like, he's the new this guy.
Right. But it's a new twist on it, you know, and that excites me. That's so exciting. And I think that we are in an age now where, I don't know if it's going to be the next generation or one that follows, but we're going to see, I'm just excited to see what form art takes on and the level of honesty that starts coming out of it. To me, that just thrills me.
Now, what are you going to do on your podcast? Are you going to bring in other musicians? Are you going to?
It's, you know, the obvious thing
You're
is
8 episodes in, right?
I think I'm getting ready to film my 6th or 7th.
6, okay.
Yeah, something
6
like that. It's obviously there will be a large music element to it, but I really want to expand it. To be quite honest with you, I've started talking a lot about my bipolar disorder, and I think that was something that startled my fans at first and my listeners. But the outreach that I've gotten as a result has been just absolutely overwhelming.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God. And you know,
it's all worth it when that one guy, you're standing on a corner in New Orleans and you're not doing a meet and greet and you don't feel good and you bounce out and the one guy comes up and he grabs you and he's shaking and he goes, you're talking about anxiety, saved my life. So I just want to say thank you and don't ever question, because I was really fucked up and I heard you talk about it and I was like, well, fuck, if Bert's got it, then I got it. Okay, that's what it is. I'm not dying. Okay, so thanks. And you're like, yep. Oh, that's why you do the podcast.
That's why I do everything. Yeah. It is literally, I would, and I'll tell you, I got an email, last week from a grandmother, and I didn't even think that grandmothers were watching or listening to my podcast. And it was this beautiful letter where she said, my granddaughter was just diagnosed with bipolar disorder, and I didn't know anything about it. And I think she said, you know, I'm paraphrasing, but she said, you know, I Googled it. I tried to learn as much as I can, but I still don't feel like I can connect with my granddaughter and have a conversation with her about this thing that is so prevalent in her life. And after watching your podcast, I went and picked her up and brought her over to the house, and we sat and watched your podcast together, because it was one where I was talking very openly about it. And she said that her granddaughter kept on pointing at the screen and saying, yeah, I've had that happen. I felt that way. Yeah. And it was, I got to tell you, that's more than any song that I've written. That hit me, you know, and it made me realize this is what I have to be doing. I have to be having real conversations with people about what really matters. And I want my art to reflect that moving forward. Not that my art hasn't reflected that in the past, but I think that this gives me a sense of approval to even maybe push that a little bit further, to open up and be a little bit more honest in my art.
It'll be those things that'll be the thing that, like, yeah, I think, like, I talked about PTSD, but it's not until I was sitting with this guy backstage and he was talking about his PTSD And everyone told me I'd had PTSD, but I was like, yeah, but I wasn't in a war. I just did a TV show.
Right.
And then all of a sudden he's talking about showers in the morning. And I was like, oh, wait, I had those showers. And about getting done and the feeling when you get done the day and you're like, and I was like, I know that feeling. And then the feeling when you are losing your shit. And I was like, oh my God, I do have PTSD.
Wow.
And then so I was like, fuck it. And it's like, it's not like what my podcast is about, but it is, my podcast is just about me.
Right.
And it's my journey or whatever with my friends or the conversations we have, the guy sharing conversations with cool people.
Yeah.
And I just was like, fuck it, I'm going to talk about PTSD because there might be people who have it who worked on an oil rig or whatever.
Yeah.
And just so they know that, like, you didn't have to go to the military to have it. Like, you could just be some idiot who got really fucking stressed out over a month of work from, like, doing some dangerous shit. And it creeps up, and man, people are always like, I'm so like, and it's the fun thing about it, you know?
Well, and you know, as a songwriter, you are as a comic, I'm assuming, you are an observer of life.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to be, and you can't just kind of watch it on the periphery and kind of absorb some things. You are a real observer of life. That's how you connect with people. And as a songwriter, it's the same thing. And I find that every single person on this planet is a movie waiting to be made, you know. And if you just take some time and talk and meet people, and you know, I mean, meet and greets are one thing, but if you actually stop and take that, and I've always done this with meet and greets, you know, with the exception, and I love your explanation of the drunk women that come up and just are so ornery and stuff. Oh. It's crazy. It's the same way in my world as well.
Oh, I bet yours is 10 times
dude,
worse.
It's rough. It's rough. That wine breath. Whew.
Oh.
But back to my point is that if you just take that extra second and look somebody in the eye and actually have a conversation, listen to even one thing that they say, and process that, you become a better person. And it's
that as opposed to, hey, thanks a lot, and then just letting them shelf them off. I always try to take the extra second as they walk away, and go, hey, just so you know, thank you very much for coming to my show, because it really does mean a lot to me that someone would take money they earned.
Oh yeah,
$60 is what it'll cost to go for you and your wife to go to my show. $60 for some people is their morning. Yeah, you know, that's their morning.
Yeah,
that's them working an entire morning. That's not even drinks. That might be a whole day of work to come see me do stand up. It means a great deal. So I always try to go, hey, thank you very much.
Yeah, listen, you know, you hear artists go, oh well, you know, they're the reason we're here. No, they are the reason you're here.
Yeah, it's such a bullshit thing when you see people go, I just want to thank my fans, and you go, hang on, do you really know?
Yeah. Are you really thanking your fans?
Are you really thanking them? Because I really thank them. Like I this year on Christmas Day, we had a really great Christmas.
Right.
And I think we were going somewhere. Oh, we were about to go to Utah to go skiing. And I was doing New Year's Eve in whatchamacallit. Then we were going to Utah. Then I was going to Atlanta with my friends to watch the championship game. And then I was going to New York. And then I was going to another place. I was doing a little bit of a tour.
Right.
And my pool is done. My house is done. We had a great Christmas. And I know we got a ski trip that we can afford. And I thought, how do I thank? Like, I really am grateful for every single person that bought a ticket. Because all those people gifted me a beautiful year.
That's right.
And I was like, how do I thank them and not sound cheesy? Like, and not sound like, I want to thank the fans. Because it's not even like, I had this guy, this is the crazy thing. I know you probably heard this. I've said this before. This is one of the most insane things I've ever heard. And it fucking blew me away. And it's how I feel about life. This guy, drunk as shit, New Year's Eve, shirts off in the meet and greet. And they're trying to shuffle him out. And he's hammered. Where I'm in West Palm. And he goes, hold on. I've got to take a minute with Bert. And I'm like, all right. And they're like, sir. And I go, hold on, give him a minute. And he goes, no, this is important.
Right.
And he looks at me, he goes, I am a fan. You need to understand what that means. I am a fan of what you do. When you succeed, that makes me happy. Do you understand that?
Wow.
And I said, yeah. And he goes, no. Think of who you're a fan of and think of what I'm saying. Watching you succeed, watching you get to this level makes me happy. I root for you to succeed. I want you to get bigger. I want you to achieve all the things you want in your life because that will bring me joy.
Wow.
I'm a fan. And I thought to myself, I'm a fan. I'm a fan also. I always came at this business as a fan.
Yeah.
I'm a fan of Joe Rogan's. When I first met, when his podcast blows up the way it is, the numbers he gets, I brag on him to people.
Right.
I go, he's killing it.
Right.
He's killing it on his own terms. I'm a fan of that shit.
Yeah.
I'm a fan of Jim Norton's. I'm a fan of Jim Norton's. Like, when he has a special, I get excited for him. When it kills, I get happy for him.
Right.
Like, I'm a fan of Rich Voss's. I am a legit fan of so much shit that I'm a fan of Tiger Woods. When he was lining up that last putt, I was like, come on, dude, do this for both of us. I want you to be happy.
Yeah.
Isn't that bizarre? And he said that to me, and I went, oh, fan is the right word. If you're a fan of mine, I'm a fan of yours.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, I want your life to be great.
Absolutely.
That guy, as drunk as he was, and as all the bouncers were trying to get him out of there, and all his friends were like, bro, you got to go. That was the most meaningful conversation I've ever had.
What an awesome moment.
What a great, to put it in perspective, because like people go, I'm a fan of yours. I go, oh yeah, thanks. You know, it didn't mean anything until that moment. And then I was like, no, I'm a fan of a lot of shit.
Yeah. That, you know, I just actually, this week on my podcast, I decided I'm actually going to have fans on the podcast, and I'm just going to be talking with fans.
Yeah.
Because again, you know, people's stories are fucking interesting, man.
It's the truth.
And I've never felt comfortable with that separation between me and them. You know,
I've never felt comfortable with it either. I have friends that are very comfortable with it, that it makes them uncomfortable to not have the separation.
Yeah.
I have it to a fault where I'm like, or someone's like, hey, can I have your phone number? I'll be like, yeah, I guess so.
I'm the same. I'm not a good rock star at all. I give out my phone number all the time, because if I sit and if I meet somebody and I find them interesting, of course I'm going to give them my phone number. Of course. That's how I know Halston, for Christ's sake. I met Halston at a show.
Yeah.
And we just hit it off, and I thought, I really like this guy.
I got this message from a fan today. Hey, Bert, I left you weed in Charlotte. Just remembered that. Did you get my Instagram message?
That's awesome. That's awesome.
By the way, I know this guy because I remember the weed he left.
Right.
But yeah. Yeah, that is. Yeah, you and Halston met through. You guys were in Vegas.
We were in Vegas.
And
he
saw you, and he's a fan of yours, and he has the title of your song tattooed on his ribs.
Yeah, exactly.
And then he geeked out, and then didn't even go to the rest of the Papa Roach concert.
And there's a lot of guys.
By the way, you know how I'm at Halston. He was just walking down the street, and I'm yelling at Isla.
I love that story.
And he heard Isla's name and was like, Bert Kreischer? And I was like, yeah.
See, I love that story.
Dude, so many people know where I live because they recognize me on my street.
Yeah.
The FedEx guy, I walked out yesterday, and he's like, Bert. I go, what's up? So many people have dropped off packages at my house and be like, oh shit, Bert, what's up? I'm like, what's up? Like, now we know where I live. Like,
see, but I think that's cool.
I think it's cool. It doesn't bother me now that I have guns. But
yeah, I mean, you look at. I don't know if you've had any kind of. We were talking about fans and love them all, but I don't know if you've had any that kind of crossed that threshold and got dangerous. I've had a couple of those, and I mean, I live in a very unassuming house. You know, right on a street. There's here in LA, and it's never an issue. And of course, when I was living in Nashville, I was in a compound. This place was awesome, and it was all gated and stuff. And I'll tell you what, during that time that I was living there, I feel like I wasn't connecting with people as an artist. I was too removed. I was too exclusive. I had bought into my own bullshit, and I was believing it. I believed I should be in a mansion. I believed that all of that stuff, and then it just all kind of dawned on me one day. I realized I don't even know how to write a song that connects with people anymore because I'm so exclusive. I've excluded myself from that.
Oh, I had an agent one time tell me I was 180 pounds. I was going to spin class every day, and I had a ton of money. And this agent by the way, the brilliance of him. Sometimes you get brilliance in like shit sandwiches. Yeah. And this guy was so good at giving you shit sandwiches, but he just couldn't help it. He was so fucking blunt. His name's Andy Cohen. He runs a big company now. And he goes, I sit down and he goes, oh, I can't wait to see what your next hour is about. Just losing weight and going to spin class, huh? And I was like, yeah. And he's having money and just doing nothing. Yeah, you'll relate to a lot of people. And I remember going like, oh fuck, I'm not living a life. And I didn't even know that. I'm living an LA life, going to spin class every day, going for a hike at Runyon Canyon, and not worrying about money. I was like, wait, who do I connect with?
Right.
And I was like, oh fuck, he was awesome. What things he would say. We were one time. I had a really good showcase, and so for ICM, he worked at ICM,
right.
And so that next morning, they took some meetings that they had already planned with other clients that were already set up, and they broke them in half and gave me half the meeting and gave the other client half the meeting. Happened to like 3 clients. One of the clients was Dane, and Andy Cohen in Sony over in Culver City. Dane was a little upset, rightfully so. His meeting that he had scheduled, and it's now a shorter meeting, and I got the front half and he got the end half.
Right.
And Dane looked at me and he goes, "This isn't about you, Bert. I apologize if it sounds like I'm talking about you. I'm just upset. We've had this meeting on the books for like a month, and now it's cut in half, and he gets half of it and I get half of it, and that shouldn't happen." And I'm sitting there, and Andy Cohen just goes, "What can I tell you? No one wants to hear, hey, Monopoly, flip the board over shit anymore, okay? They want to hear what he's talking about." And I remember going like, whoa, like he was just so like, no one wants to hear that, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, whoa, this is my agent. He was so funny. He was like, "You're never going to book a role." I was like, "What?" And he goes, "Yeah, you're never going to book a role." He's like, "You'll be Bert. Someone will hire Bert, but no one's hiring you to be a fucking actor."
Wow.
And I was like, and by the way, he was so accurate. I don't know if it was self-fulfilling, if I was like, yeah, and I never auditioned again.
Right.
But like, it's true. I get hired more as Bert. So like, people would rather see Bert than
See, I admire that
be.
though. Even though it's a little abrasive and it can be uncomfortable, I always admire people that can just be that straightforward.
Blunt, like Leanne. My family used to say, if you want to feel good about your feelings, ask Bert. If you want the truth, ask Leanne. I'll always tell you whatever you want to hear. "Oh, that looks great on you." And Leanne's like, "Oh, I do not like that." And you're like, well, I did a play one time and I got done the play. It was the first play I ever did. I come out of it and I get in the car with Leanne. I go, "What did you think?" She goes, "You are not a good actor." And I was like,
so you're because I always think of you as completely unfiltered and very honest about things, but you're a people pleaser then, aren't you?
Oh, hardcore.
Yeah.
Hardcore, and I don't like confrontation.
Yeah, I get it.
You should listen to the Aisling B conversation I had with that Irish comic. You were here.
Yeah, dude, I did listen to that. I actually have, I was conflicted about that because she seems lovely.
She is.
And listen, she made some points that I think were so important because of this bigger discussion we're having right now about the unfairness of how women are treated. But I have to say that I take issue with her message because I feel that when you're talking about the arts, none of those rules can apply anymore. I couldn't tell. I kind of sensed that you pushed back a little bit on it, but I just think that when it comes to the arts, we can't put these regulators on it and say, because I personally don't care if you're white, you're black, you're gay, you're straight, you're a woman, you're a man. You made it not because you're you joke about being white privileged a lot.
Yeah.
You made it because you're fucking good at what you did, and you worked the door, and you fucking busted your ass, and you took a lot of a lot of hits for it. And I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but was there ever a time where other people were pushed aside and you were let in just because you were a white male?
I would say no, but I would say that like there are things I didn't get to say to her in the conversation. I don't like confrontation totally. I'd rather have a good conversation.
Yeah.
But like one of the things that is very white privilege is consumers. So like I worked with a black comic. I wish I could remember his name. Kevin something. He's really talented. We were in Chicago. He opened for me. He was older than me, and he was destroying, and I was having a hard time following him.
Right.
And then in the middle of the weekend, a little frustrated. I think he was a little frustrated. He goes, "I don't understand why you're headlining and I'm not. Like why they don't switch it up." I was like, "I don't know either." Like I like, and then we kind of broke it down, and I realized they can't put a black man's face on a poster and expect white people to show up, because white people are conditioned to go, that black guy is probably Black Night. Right. I don't want to go to that night because they're going to single me out and it's going to be uncomfortable. I'm not going to get any of the jokes, so they just don't go.
Right.
The same way black people don't go to a white guy.
Yeah, I understand.
But like
that.
they're not. But if you're doing business in Schaumburg, where that was, You put a white guy's face up, and white people will go, oh, let's give it a try.
Right.
And so I think
I think she obviously had a point, and it's a very real.
Well, it's the same thing happens with women. You can't put a woman's face up there and move tickets the way you could like a white guy's face.
See, I wasn't aware of that.
No, it's just true, but that's not. But
my thing is this: is that you.
And by the way, I mean like just a woman and a white guy, not like Eliza Schlesinger, Bert Kreischer, like. Just a woman and then a white guy. Like there are guys still in this world that go, I don't want to see that. I'm going to go see that guy. So clubs know that competing.
I've always just felt like you create your art and then eventually the audience votes on it. And they vote whether you're good or whether you're bad. They vote whether they like you, whether they want to hear more of you or whether they don't. I guess the part that I'm not getting, and this is, I guess what she's saying, and it probably is true, is that her audience isn't even being given a chance to vote because they do vote. There were in hindsight, and I think I tried to stand up for this, and I don't think I made my point clear. But the inaccuracies that are inherent in that argument is what I was saying is that. We're talking about consumers. We're in a business where the consumer buys the ticket. Right.
So if you allow, and the club is a privately owned club, and by the way, the booker is very cognizant of trying to make. Booker's Adam Egget. He is a sweet guy, and he's very cognizant of trying to make it a very broad span of talent throughout an evening.
Right.
He is extremely cognizant of making sure there are women on the bill. And I think there are a lot of white comics that heard that then argued to me, this is bullshit, because as a white guy, like, and this is a little true, but a lot of the women that haven't been doing it maybe as long as myself will call and get spots, a little easier, not than me. I can get spots whenever I want, but they will get spots easier than a guy at their same level,
right?
Because they're a woman, and I think that is what a lot of male comics, a lot of comics in general, messaged me after that podcast. And then the other thing that is not fair in this argument was not spoken was that so. Women, once you get to a certain place as a woman, you leapfrog far as fuck.
Yeah.
So like it's 7 years as a comic as a woman. If you are at all competent in your craft and you get opportunities that a guy would never get at 7 years. Right. And it's the reason that people go shit on Amy Schumer is because as a 7-year comic, she became the biggest comic in the world.
Right.
And I mean, she shouldn't be. That won't happen to a guy only because there's so many guys in the business. You're never going to be bigger than Chris Rock.
Right.
But as Amy, you're very quickly the biggest female comic in the world.
Right.
At 10 years, Amy was the biggest comic in the world. But she's only been doing it 10 years.
Right.
As a guy, that just won't happen.
Well,
I mean, it does sometimes, but it doesn't in that. These are all arguments that all my friends have been emailing me nonstop, and I wish I had with Aisling, but.
Well, and like I said, I mean, listen, I understand that frustration, and in the broader spectrum, outside of the arts, this is absolutely a discussion we need to be having because women are incredibly unfairly treated in the corporate world. I mean, across the board. But here's my problem: the arts do not owe anybody a career.
No, you're right about that.
You are not entitled to a career. There, in almost every other profession, there is a natural progression. If you learn the trade, if you work hard, if you improve your skill set, you will eventually find your way in that career.
Yeah.
The arts just isn't that. It never has been that. You did not get to where you were going or where you are because you followed this straight regimen of things. Neither did I.
That's the thing that makes most comics the most angry is when they go, but you didn't pay your dues. And you're like, no. It's not just about paying dues. Sometimes in the arts, talent or the it factor just leapfrogs. It just leapfrogs. Look at Gerard Carmichael.
Right.
He's a young comic, and all of a sudden, Spike Lee likes him, and he does his thing, and everyone falls in love with the guy.
Is it unfair? Absolutely.
Yeah,
is it unjust? Absolutely. Is it frustrating? Absolutely.
Adam Devine wrote Workaholics with his friends.
Right.
Shot a couple of them. Comedy Central bought it. Everyone fell in love with it.
Yeah.
Is it fair that Adam, probably isn't as he's bigger than Bill Burr as a movie star,
right?
But is it fair? No, but it doesn't fucking matter, you know.
And again, I just want to make that clear so that people don't start lambasting me for saying that.
They won't on my podcast.
But
there were a lot
truly,
of people that sided with.
Truly, I firmly believe that we are so fucking lucky to be able to do what we want to do. It is luck, dude. Yes, we both have to have skills, but it is luck that we are here doing this. We just got fucking lucky. Nobody owed it to us.
Yes, I feel lucky. I'm the luckiest man in the fucking world.
Me too.
I am definitely. Well, now I feel like you got to have me on your podcast.
Please.
Like, I would love to come on your podcast. How long have we gone, Halston? 220. That's perfect.
Longest podcast I've ever done.
That's right.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was funny. The first one I did was like an hour and 10 minutes, and I felt like 4 hours. So I was like, "Whew, how long, Halston?" Hour and 10 minutes. Like, Jesus, this is gonna be rough.
Oh, we've had some that have been like that, where I'm like, "How much?" And he's like, 59 minutes, and I'm like, "Huh." So, what was your mom like?
Well, dude, thank you so much for having me on.
No,
It's
I
funny.
appreciate it. This has been a great conversation.
I really have loved this.
I'm interested to see what Dan Adler thinks, because he always tells me, he'll like, I didn't like that one. It was too much comedy. And this one, I think he's going to be like, oh, I love that conversation.
Oh, good.
So I appreciate you doing this. And the name of your podcast is?
It's JAMcast, the James Michael podcast.
Yeah. Oh, that's where JAMcast came from.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so funny. Because
Well,
I listened to the intro music, and I was like, and Leanne was singing it along with it.
Yeah.
And I was like,
Yes.
how do you know?
That's Halston on there going, JAMcast. That's
Really?
Halston. Oh, yeah.
Well, the last thing I'll say is here's what I want to do. I want to come on your podcast. I want to do an interactive podcast where we write my Jimmy Buffett album.
Dude.
And that will be the next phase of my career, is just doing Jimmy Buffett shows.
Let's do it.
Where I write songs that are based off of things that are like we'll have one song, one more Tito's and soda, please.
Dude, I do the podcast in my recording studio, so we'll be all set up and ready to go. We'll start tracking that shit as we do.
I'm done drinking. I think I'll eat an edible is one of my songs.
I love it.
I carry minis in my backpack. These are my song album titles.
Oh my God.
And they're just for my fans of drinking. Well, I appreciate you doing this. I really appreciate it.
Thank you
It's
very
been a
much,
blast.
man. Yeah, likewise.
And Halston, way to not chime in at all. You didn't say a word.
I don't like to talk much.
I heard Halston on your first episode, and he was such a douche in one part. Like he goes, as I think day to day. Like you were so
What?
you were so a musician. You were so a musician. I was like, I don't get that side of him at all. I don't get that side.
I think I was nervous the first podcast a little bit, for sure.
Were you?
Yeah, it's kind of a big deal.
Oh, it
First
made me
podcast.
laugh so hard. I listened to it over and over. As the days go on. I think that's what you said. As the days go on, day to day.
Oh my
Right.
God, I know.
I
what
just
you're
threw
talking
to him like for a quick little quip, and there's like, well, it all began.
The more you do these, the more fun they are, and the more you become more relaxed. Like,
Yeah.
I was horrible at the first, but when Halston said that, I started laughing so fucking hard. I must have played it over 5 times, because it's Halston going, as the days go on, day to day. I went, you fucking idiot.
I know exactly what you're talking about. He was talking about different sounds of bands or something, and I was like, as the days go on, I find myself pulling away from certain bands and sounds.
You know what's awesome though? He's turning into a little bit of a rock star. He's getting a pretty big following on social media, because he keeps popping up on the podcast, and some of my fans are starting to be
I will say
Halston
this,
fans.
I'll say this wholeheartedly. The day you guys started your podcast, he came and told us, and we got so excited for him, because he was like, my life's changing. Everything's
Yeah,
happening.
yeah.
I'm doing another podcast. And I
Listen,
was like,
seriously, he's a fucking inspiration story, dude.
Yeah.
I mean, it's.
he's a man who has willed his destiny on accident. You are a beautiful disaster,
Yeah.
Halston. You have walked into your careers,
Absolutely.
literally bumped into them twice.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
literally walking down the street at the right time.
Yeah.
This is the if you ever see Halston walking around your city, follow him. Good shit
Absolutely,
bumps into
because he's
him.
going someplace. Absolutely, man. Well, thank you again for having me on. It's just, and like I said, you really are inspiring me in a lot of ways. So
I appreciate it. Well, I can't wait to do your podcast now.
awesome, dude.
Awesome. Thank you.
Right on.
That was fucking great.
This episode was brought to you by The Machine.